Standing in the doorway of my childhood home on Thanksgiving night, I heard my father's words echo through the cold November air, like shards of broken glass. "Get out, you piece of trash!" The venom in his voice made my 5-year-old daughter Emma stir in my arms, her small body trembling against mine. 28 pairs of eyes from my extended family stared at me with disgust, their judgment heavy as lead. They called me the family disgrace, the unwed mother who brought shame to our respectable name. I adjusted Emma's weight on my hip, looked my father straight in the eye, and whispered one word, "Fine." As I walked into the darkness, not one of them knew that the family disgrace they just expelled owned the very foundation beneath their feet and controlled every penny of their fortune. The drive to my modest 2-bedroom apartment felt endless, with Emma's quiet sobs filling the space between us. Each tear that rolled down her cherished face carved another groove into my already fractured heart. "Why doesn't Grandpa love us, Mommy?" she asked, her voice so small it barely reached above the hum of the car engine. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, searching for words that wouldn't come. 5 years ago, my life changed in ways my family would never understand. While they saw me as the college dropout who got pregnant at 27, I was actually building something revolutionary in the late hours after my waitressing shifts. My medical software, designed to predict patient complications before symptoms appeared, caught the attention of MedTech Global. The acquisition happened so fast, I barely had time to process the check they handed me, $20 million. Most people would have celebrated thrown parties, bought mansions. I did none of those things. Instead, I set up an intricate web of trusts and anonymous donations that would channel money to my family without their knowledge. My parents' mortgage, which had been crushing them for 30 years, disappeared overnight through what they believed was a bank error in their favor. When Marcus, my older brother, came to me in tears about his third failed business venture, I listened to him call me a disappointment while secretly wiring $200,000 to save him from bankruptcy. He received a letter saying an angel investor believed in his potential. Sarah, my younger sister, the golden child who graduated summa cum laude, never knew that her law school applications were bolstered by recommendation letters I ghost wrote and connections I facilitated. When she got into Harvard Law, the scholarship that appeared was from a foundation I created specifically for her. She celebrated at a family dinner where I wasn't invited, toasting to her hard work while I paid her $100,000 tuition from my phone in the parking lot. The trust fund I established generated enough monthly income to cover their basic needs, plus luxuries they'd never dreamed of before. My father's monthly pension increase was actually my doing. The investment dividends my mother bragged about at church came from accounts I managed. Even their health insurance, upgraded to platinum level, was subsidized by a medical foundation I controlled. Every month, I watched them thrive while maintaining my facade as the struggling single mother. I moved into a small apartment in a working-class neighborhood, drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, and shopped at discount stores. When Emma was born, I sent her birth announcement in a simple card, knowing it would be met with cold silence. They never asked about their granddaughter's needs, never offered help, never showed interest beyond condemning my choices. Why did I hide my success? The question haunted me during sleepless nights. Part of me wanted to protect them from the avalanche of distant relatives who would suddenly appear with outstretched hands. Another part feared that money would change our already fragile relationship. But the deepest truth was simpler. I needed to know if their love for me existed beyond material worth. My phone buzzed with a notification from the trust's automated system. Another $50,000 had just been transferred to cover my parents' property taxes and home repairs. They'd wake up tomorrow thinking their financial advisor was a genius, never knowing their disgrace of a daughter had orchestrated every cent. Emma had fallen asleep by the time we reached our apartment. I carried her to her room, decorated with hand-painted murals I'd created during my pregnancy. Her walls told stories of brave princesses who didn't need princes of girls who built kingdoms with their own hands. I tucked her under her favorite quilt handmade by the only family member who showed us kindness, my grandmother, who passed last year. Sitting on my thrift store couch, I opened my laptop to check the trust's balance. $18.3 million remained after 2 years of silent support. My family lived in comfort while believing they'd earned every penny through their own merit. The irony tasted bitter in my mouth. My phone rang showing an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe accept. Jordan. The voice was soft, uncertain. My cousin Lisa, who'd stood silent during tonight's expulsion. I just wanted to say, what happened tonight wasn't right. Emma doesn't deserve to grow up thinking family treats each other that way. Her words broke something inside me. I thanked her quietly and ended the call before she could hear me cry. One voice of kindness in a chorus of condemnation. It wasn't enough to heal the wounds, but it reminded me that not everyone in our bloodline had frozen hearts. Tomorrow would bring decisions I wasn't ready to make. Tonight, I had my daughter safe in her bed, and the knowledge that despite their cruelty, my family would wake up financially secure because of the very person they'd thrown away like garbage. The trust would continue its automatic transfers, the bills would be paid, and they'd never suspect that their disgrace was actually their salvation. I poured myself a glass of wine from a bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. This wasn't the celebration I'd imagined, but perhaps there was something worth toasting in finally seeing my family's true colors. The money had been a test, and they'd failed spectacularly. At least now I knew where I stood outside in the cold holding the keys to a kingdom they didn't even know existed. Black Friday arrived with harsh sunlight streaming through my bedroom window and my phone vibrating insistently on the nightstand. The caller ID showed David Hartman, my attorney, who'd handled the medtech acquisition. David never called before 9 unless something was seriously wrong. Jordan, we need to talk immediately. His voice carried an urgency that made me sit up straight. I've been monitoring some financial activities as part of our regular security protocols, and there's something you need to know about your father. My stomach dropped. In the 5 years since establishing the family trusts, David had become more than just my lawyer. He was one of the few people who knew the full extent of my hidden support system. His job was to ensure everything ran smoothly while maintaining my anonymity. If he was calling at 7 in the morning, smooth was the last thing happening. Your father has been in contact with several real estate agents about selling the Riverside Drive property, David continued. The house you purchased and transferred to his name 2 years ago. He's telling potential buyers he needs quick cash, and Jordan, there's more. Our investigator discovered he owes significant money to some very dangerous people. I moved to the kitchen needing coffee to process this information. Emma was still sleeping, peaceful and unaware that her grandfather was apparently gambling away the roof over his head, the same roof I'd secretly provided to ensure my family's stability. How much does he owe? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. From what we can determine, approximately $800,000. He's been frequenting underground poker games in Chinatown, and the people running them aren't the type to accept payment plans. David paused, and I could hear him shuffling papers. There's security footage from last Tuesday showing him meeting with known mob enforcers. He promised them the house would sell within 30 days. The coffee maker gurgled as I processed this information. My father, the man who'd called me a disgrace to our family name, who'd preached about honor and responsibility, my entire life was selling the home I'd gifted him to pay off mob debts. The same man who'd thrown me out last night for bringing shame to our family was consorting with criminals. There's something else. David added, his tone growing even more serious. In the real estate listings, he specifically mentions that his estranged daughter won't receive any inheritance, and that buyers needn't worry about future claims on the property. He's actively marketing your disinheritance as a selling point. I laughed, but it came out hollow and bitter. The irony was almost too much to bear. He was promising buyers that I wouldn't inherit a house I'd purchased with my own money, transferred to him out of love, while he believed it was rightfully his through decades of hard work. "Can we stop the sale legally?" I asked, already knowing the complicated answer. "Technically, the house is in his name free and clear. However, I built in some protective measures when we did the transfer. There's a clause that requires notification of any sale to a specific LLC, which happens to be controlled by your trust. We can delay things, but if he's desperate enough, he might find ways around it." Emma's voice called from her room asking for breakfast. I told David I'd call him back and went to start our morning routine. As I made pancakes shaped like butterflies, her favorite, my phone buzzed with messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Real estate agents forwarding me listings of my father's house with aggressive marketing language about motivated sellers and quick closings. One message stood out. It included interior photos of the house, and I noticed something troubling. My mother's cherished china, the collection she'd inherited from her grandmother, was missing from the dining room display. The family portraits that had lined the hallway were gone. They were already liquidating assets, preparing for what they assumed would be a profitable sale. Emma chatted happily about her plans for the day, blissfully unaware that her family was imploding over money they didn't know came from us. I smiled and engaged with her stories while my mind raced through possibilities. Should I let the house sell and allow my father to face the consequences of his choices? Or should I intervene again, saving him from dangers he'd created while he continued to view me as worthless? David called back as I was cleaning up breakfast dishes. "I've done more digging. Your father's gambling debts go back at least 3 years. He's been using the monthly trust payments to fund his habit instead of household expenses. Your mother has been selling family heirlooms to buy groceries while he tells her business is slow." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My carefully orchestrated support system hadn't been helping my family thrive. It had been enabling my father's addiction. Every dollar I'd sent to ensure their comfort had gone straight to poker tables and loan sharks. My mother, too proud to admit they were struggling, had been quietly selling off pieces of our family history. "I've also reviewed the trust distributions," David continued. "Your brother Marcus has been receiving approximately $40,000 monthly for his business ventures, but corporate records show he hasn't registered any legitimate companies in 2 years. Your sister Sarah's loan payments are current, but she's been telling colleagues her family's wealth comes from old investments and smart financial planning by your father." Each word painted a clearer picture of the elaborate fiction my family had built on the foundation of my hidden generosity. They'd created an entire narrative about their success that excluded the one person making it possible. My father was a brilliant investor, Marcus the entrepreneurial genius, Sarah the self-made legal star, and I remained the cautionary tale, the family failure they used to make themselves feel superior. Emma brought me a drawing she'd made our little family of 2 standing in front of a house with a garden. "This is our dream home, Mommy," she announced proudly, "where nobody can be mean to us." Looking at her innocent artwork, I made a decision. The elaborate game of anonymous support had to end, not because I wanted recognition or gratitude, but because I'd been enabling toxic behaviors while protecting people who felt no obligation to protect us. My father's gambling, Marcus's false business ventures, Sarah's elitist attitudes, they'd all flourished in the comfortable bubble I'd created. "David, I need you to freeze all trust distributions immediately," I said, watching Emma color another picture, "and start preparing documentation about the house's true ownership. If my father wants to sell, he's going to learn exactly what he's been trying to give away." "Are you sure?" David asked. "Once this information comes out, there's no putting it back in the bottle." I thought about last night, standing in that doorway while my family celebrated my exile. The pain in Emma's eyes when she asked why her grandfather didn't love us. The years of silent sacrifice met with nothing but contempt. I'm sure, I replied. It's time they learned that the family disgrace has been the family foundation all along. And if my father's gambling has put him in danger, maybe understanding the source of his perceived wealth will motivate better choices. As I ended the call, I noticed Emma had added something to her drawing. Next to our little house, she'd drawn more figures. Friends who love us, she explained, pointing to the smiling faces. Even at 5, she understood that real family wasn't always about blood. It was about who showed up, who offered support, who loved you even when you weren't perfect. My phone rang again. This time, it was the security company monitoring my parents' house, my house reporting suspicious activity. 3 men in dark suits had been photographing the property and attempting to peer through windows. The security guard had asked them to leave, but they'd mentioned returning with documentation from Mr. Peterson, my father. The morning that had started with difficult revelations was spiraling into something more dangerous. My father wasn't just risking his home, he was potentially putting my mother and the entire family in danger by dealing with criminal elements. The very security I'd tried to provide was being dismantled by the man who'd called me a disgrace. I made another decision. It was time to visit my beach house in Miami, the one property I'd kept in my own name, the retreat I'd purchased for Emma and me when the weight of carrying my family's secrets became too heavy. We needed distance from this chaos while I figured out how to protect people who wouldn't protect us. But first, I had one more call to make. Lisa, my cousin, who'd reached out last night, deserved to know the storm that was coming. If anyone in my family had shown a spark of humanity, it was her. Lisa, I said when she answered, things are about to get complicated for our family. I wanted you to know it's not your fault, and if you need anything at all, you have my number. Her confused response made it clear she had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The house of cards I'd built to shelter my family was about to collapse, and they were going to discover that their financial foundation had been standing on the shoulders of the one person they deemed unworthy of their love. The notification sound from my phone pierced through the quiet afternoon as Emma napped in her room. Sarah had added me to the family group chat, something I'd been excluded from for over 2 years. My first instinct was to ignore it, but the preview of her message made my blood run cold. Thought you should see what you're missing, Jordan. Happy Black Friday shopping with your money. I opened the chat and found myself scrolling through months of conversations I was never meant to see. The deeper I went, the more my chest tightened with each revelation. What started as casual family updates revealed something far more sinister, a coordinated plan to ensure Emma and I would never receive anything from the family estate. 3 months ago, my mother had written, Marcus found a good estate lawyer. We need to make sure everything is ironclad before Jordan tries to claim anything. That child of hers is proof of her sin, and sin shouldn't be rewarded. My hands shook as I continued reading. Marcus had responded with legal documents, drafts of wills that explicitly excluded Jordan Elizabeth Peterson and any of her offspring, legitimate or otherwise. He'd researched precedents, found cases where family members had successfully disinherited children who'd brought shame to the family name. Sarah, ever the law student, had refined the language. We need to be careful about contestability. If we frame it around moral turpitude and family values, courts rarely overturn these decisions. I'll draft something more bulletproof over winter break. The casual cruelty in their words felt like ice in my veins. These weren't heated comments made in anger. This was calculated, methodical planning to cut us out completely. They discussed their strategy like a business meeting, assigning tasks and setting deadlines for finalizing documents. My Aunt Patricia had chimed in, "Don't forget about life insurance policies. Robert should update beneficiaries before Jordan catches wind. Maybe require marriage certificates for any claims that would automatically exclude her bastard child." Bastard. They'd called my brilliant, kind, innocent Emma a bastard in writing where she might someday find it and read how her own family viewed her existence. The conversation shifted to discussing their future wealth, the assets they believed were theirs, through merit and hard work. My father boasted about his investment portfolio worth $2.8 million, not knowing I'd created and managed every account. My mother planned renovations for the house using their dividend payments, while I remembered the nights I'd stayed up restructuring investments to increase their yield. Once the trust matures next year, we'll have enough to set up education funds for the grandchildren who deserve it, my mother had written just last week. Sarah's future children won't have to worry about college like we did. Sarah's future theoretical children deserved education funds, but Emma, who was real and present and brilliant, deserved nothing in their eyes. The trust they referenced was one I'd specifically designed to appear as if it came from a deceased relative's estate, maturing on a schedule that would provide them lifetime security. I found a subthread where they'd shared screenshots of my social media, the few photos I'd posted of Emma and me at the park at the library, living our quiet life. Their comments dissected everything: my cheap clothes, Emma's hand-me-down toys, our pathetic apartment existence. Marcus had written, "At least she's consistent. Failure in college, failure as a woman, failure as a mother." The irony of him calling me a failure while his mortgage was paid by my trust fund would have been funny if it weren't so painful. He lived in a house I'd saved from foreclosure, drove a car I'd prevented from being repossessed, and ran businesses funded entirely by my monthly allocations. More recent messages discussed Thanksgiving preparations. They'd actively planned to invite everyone except us, calling it a cleansing of the family. No need for Emma to confuse the younger cousins about proper family structures, Aunt Patricia had suggested. Children need to see good examples, not cautionary tales. My cousin Lisa hadn't participated in these conversations, I noticed. Her name appeared in the member list, but she'd never responded to the cruel planning sessions. It explained her call last night, the guilt she must have felt watching this unfold silently. The final thread before last night was the most revealing. They'd discovered I was doing better than expected through some social media investigation. Someone had spotted me at a nice restaurant for Emma's birthday last month, a rare splurge I'd allowed ourselves. This single moment of visible comfort had triggered a panic about potential inheritance claims. If she can afford restaurants, she might hire a lawyer, Sarah had warned. We need to file everything before she realizes what we have is worth fighting for. What they had, every penny they'd marked as theirs existed because I'd created it, managed it, distributed it while living on a fraction of my true wealth to maintain the illusion. They worried about me fighting for scraps of an inheritance that was already mine. The post-Thanksgiving messages were pure gloating. Photos of their feast at the table I'd paid for, toasts with wine I'd funded, celebrations in the house I'd saved. Sarah's final message included a video of my father raising a glass to family who upholds our values and to cutting out the cancer that tried to corrupt them. Cancer. I was cancer to them. Emma stirred in her room, calling softly for water. I closed the chat and went to her, grateful for the excuse to step away from the poison on my screen. As I held the cup to her lips, she smiled sleepily and said, "Love you, Mommy. You're the best mommy in the whole world." Her innocent love stood in stark contrast to the calculated hatred I'd just witnessed. How could they look at this precious child and see only shame? How could they plan her exclusion while benefiting from her mother's hidden generosity? I returned to my phone to find new messages. They'd noticed I hadn't responded to Sarah's taunt. My brother had added, "Probably crying in her studio apartment. Remember when she thought she'd be a doctor? Now she can't even afford to fix that piece of junk she drives." The Honda they mocked ran perfectly because I maintained it carefully, choosing reliability over luxury. The studio apartment they imagined was actually a comfortable 2-bedroom in a safe neighborhood with an excellent school district for Emma. Every assumption they made was wrong, but their cruelty was crystal clear. My phone buzzed with another notification, this time from my banking app. The automated trust transfer had processed $50,000 distributed across my family members' accounts for December expenses. They were actively planning to destroy us while their bank accounts filled with our money. I typed a response to the group chat, then deleted it, then typed again, deleted again. What could I say that would penetrate their wall of self-righteousness? How could words convey the cosmic irony of their situation? Instead, I took screenshots of everything. Every cruel word, every legal threat, every moment of calculated planning to harm my daughter. David would need these for whatever came next. The family I'd protected so carefully had revealed themselves completely, and their own words would be their undoing. Sarah sent one final message. Nothing to say, Jordan. Finally realizing your place good. Stay there, and keep that mistake of yours away from decent people. Mistake. They called Emma a mistake. The little girl who could already read at 5, who shared her toys with everyone at play school, who drew pictures for sick children at the hospital where I volunteered. She was the best thing I'd ever created, worth more than all the money I'd hidden, more precious than any family approval. I opened my laptop and began composing an email to David. It was time to accelerate our plans. If they wanted to play legal games, they were about to discover that the family Disgrace had resources they couldn't imagine. But more importantly, they were about to learn that cruelty had consequences, and karma sometimes arrives in the form of the person you underestimated most. The group chat continued pinging with notifications as they celebrated my silence. Let them celebrate, I thought. Let them think they've won. Tomorrow, when their automatic deposits didn't arrive, when their credit cards linked to my trusts stopped working, when the house they were so eager to steal revealed its true ownership, they'd understand that the family cancer they'd tried to cut out had actually been the heart keeping them all alive. Emma called out again, fully awake now and requesting dinner. I put away my phone and laptop, choosing to focus on the family that actually mattered, the two of us against the world. We'd have pasta tonight, her favorite, and I'd tell her stories about princesses who built their own castles and never needed validation from anyone who didn't deserve them. The group chat could wait. Their cruelty would be addressed. But tonight, I had a daughter to love and a life to live free from the toxic weight of blood relatives who'd proven that DNA meant nothing when poison ran through family veins. Saturday morning arrived with an urgent alert from my home security system. The motion sensors in my apartment hallway had been triggered, and the camera feed showed something that made my coffee cup freeze halfway to my lips. Marcus stood outside my door with 2 men I didn't recognize, and they were working on my lock with what looked like professional tools. My hands moved faster than my thoughts, immediately calling 911 while keeping the security feed open on my laptop. Emma was at her Saturday morning art class, thank God, safely away from whatever this was. I gave the dispatcher my address and explained that 3 men were attempting to break into my apartment. "Ma'am, are you in the residence now?" the dispatcher asked. No, I'm watching through security cameras. The man in the blue jacket is my brother, but he doesn't have permission to enter. I don't know who the other 2 are." On the screen, I watched Marcus gesture impatiently at the men, clearly frustrated that my locks were better than whatever tools they'd brought. He kept checking his phone and looking around nervously. One of the men said something that made Marcus pull out his wallet, counting out bills. The dispatcher confirmed units were en route, but I kept watching, needing to understand what my brother was after. He'd never shown interest in visiting before, had never even asked for my address. How had he found me? The answer came when Marcus held up his phone to show the other men something on the screen. Even through the security camera, I could make out the group chat messages. Someone had done enough digging to find my location, and Marcus had decided to investigate the pathetic studio apartment they'd imagined. 5 minutes passed before I heard sirens approaching on the feed. The 2 men with Marcus immediately stepped back, but he grabbed one of them, gesturing wildly. They were arguing about money, it seemed, with Marcus insisting on something while pointing at my door. The police arrived just as one of the men had produced a different tool, something that looked more serious than simple lockpicks. The officer's commands were clear even through the camera audio, and all three men raised their hands. Marcus's face cycled through expressions: surprise, anger, then a calculated attempt at charm. I called David while watching the scene unfold. My brother just tried to break into my apartment with two other men. Police are there now. "Don't go home until I get there," David said immediately. "I'm leaving now. Are you recording everything?" The security system saves everything to the cloud automatically. I watched as Marcus gestured frantically at the officers, clearly trying to explain why breaking into his sister's apartment was somehow justified. He's probably claiming family emergency or something similar. The officers separated the three men, and I could see them running identification checks. The two strangers looked increasingly uncomfortable, especially when backup units arrived. Whatever story Marcus had told them clearly hadn't included police involvement. My phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Jordan." Marcus's voice was strained. "Look, there's been a misunderstanding. I just wanted to check on you after Thursday night. The door was stuck, so these maintenance guys were helping." "Maintenance guys don't use lockpicks, Marcus," I interrupted. "And you've never cared about checking on me before. What were you really after?" There was a pause. Then his voice dropped to something more desperate. "Dad owes money, real money, to dangerous people. They think our family has hidden assets, and after you left so calmly the other night, not even fighting back, Sarah said maybe you weren't as broke as we thought. So you decided to break into my home. I was just going to look around, see if you had anything that could help Dad. You don't understand, Jordan. These people threaten to hurt Mom if we don't pay." The revelation should have shocked me, but after yesterday's discoveries, I only felt tired. My father's gambling had escalated to the point where criminals were threatening my mother, and Marcus's solution was to rob his sister. "The police are arresting you, Marcus. I'm pressing charges." "You can't." His voice cracked. "I'm your brother. Family doesn't try to break into each other's homes. Family doesn't call children bastards and mistakes. Family doesn't plan legal strategies to disinherit 5-year-olds. My voice remained steady despite the storm inside. "You made it clear Thursday night that I'm not family, so now we handle this like strangers." I ended the call and watched the rest unfold on camera. The officers had found tools and what looked like a crowbar in one of the strangers' backpacks. This wasn't a simple lock-picking attempt. They'd come prepared for a forced entry. David arrived at my location 20 minutes later. "The two men with Marcus have prior convictions for burglary," he informed me after a few phone calls. "Your brother hired actual criminals to break into your apartment. He said Dad owes dangerous people money, that they threatened Mom." David's expression darkened. "Then we need to move faster than planned. If your father's debts have escalated to threats against your mother, this situation is more volatile than we thought." We drove to my apartment together, arriving to find the building manager in the hallway looking frazzled. Crime scene tape covered my door, and an officer was photographing damage to the lock mechanism. "Ms. Peterson." The lead detective, a woman named Rivera, approached us. "We'll need you to check if anything's missing, though they didn't make it inside. Your security system is excellent." "I invest in good protection," I said, thinking of all the reasons I needed it. David handled the legal formalities. While I entered my apartment with Officer Rivera, everything appeared untouched, but knowing Marcus had tried to violate this space, Emma's and my sanctuary, made me feel sick. I moved through each room, checking my hidden safe behind a painting, my important documents in a concealed drawer, my laptop with its encrypted files. In my home office, I paused. My awards from the software development were displayed on a shelf, along with photos from the MedTech acquisition ceremony. I'd kept them here in private, the only place I allowed myself to acknowledge my success. If Marcus had made it inside, he would have seen everything. "Ma'am," Officer Rivera noticed my stillness. "Is something missing?" "No," I said softly, just realizing how close he came to discovering things that would have changed everything. She didn't press for details, but made notes about the awards and photos. Marcus had hired criminals to find evidence of hidden wealth, not knowing he was literally feet away from proof of millions. We returned to the hallway where David was finishing with the detective in charge. Your brother is being charged with attempted burglary conspiracy and criminal trespassing. The two men with him face additional charges due to their tools and prior records. He's claiming financial desperation due to family medical bills. Medical bills. I almost laughed at the irony. Their premium health insurance, which I paid for, covered everything. He's trying to establish sympathy, says his father has a gambling problem that's put the family in danger, and he was looking for anything to help. Later that evening, after ensuring new locks were being installed and additional security measures were in place, I sat with Emma at her favorite restaurant. She chatted about art class, showing me the painting she'd made of butterflies in a garden. Mommy, why were there police cars at our building? She asked, suddenly more observant than I'd hoped. Someone tried to visit when we weren't home but didn't have permission. The police made sure everything was safe. Was it Grandpa? Her question stopped my heart. No, sweetheart. Why would you think that? He seemed really mad the other night, and Uncle Marcus sometimes looks at you the same way when he visits them. My 5-year-old had noticed the family dynamics I'd tried to shield her from. Children see more than we think, absorb more than we realize. We're safe, I assured her. I'll always keep us safe. That evening, after Emma was asleep, I received a call from county jail. Marcus wanted to speak with me. I almost declined, but decided to hear what he had to say. I was Jordan. I'm sorry, he began, sounding genuinely broken. When I got to your building and saw it wasn't some dump, like we thought, I got desperate. Dad owes $800,000 to people who don't accept payment plans. They showed up at the house yesterday with photos of Mom at her grocery store at church. They know her whole routine. And you thought robbing me would solve this? I found some old paperwork in Dad's office last week. Transactions I didn't understand, property transfers that didn't make sense. I thought maybe you were hiding something, sitting on resources while the rest of us scrambled to figure this out. He was so close to the truth, yet so far from understanding it. Yes, I'd been hiding something, sitting on resources, but I'd been using those resources to support them all along. What kind of paperwork? I asked carefully. House deed stuff. The signature dates don't match Dad's story about when he paid off the mortgage. And there are these LLC documents that reference trusts I've never heard of. When I asked him, he got defensive, said I didn't understand complex finances. My brother, despite his failures and cruelty, had stumbled onto breadcrumbs of my hidden support system. His desperation had led him to crime, but ironically, it was also leading him toward truth. Marcus, I'm not dropping the charges, I said firmly. You tried to break into my home where my daughter lives. You hired criminals and put our entire building at risk. There are consequences for that. I know, he whispered. I can't watch Mom get hurt because of Dad's problems, and now I'm making everything worse. Maybe it's time for the family to face some hard truths, I suggested, about Dad's gambling, about the source of the money you've all been living on, about who really owns what. What are you talking about? Ask Dad about the house. Ask him about the trust payments. Ask him why the deed signature doesn't match his stories. Or better yet, wait a few days. I think everyone's about to get an education in reality. I ended the call feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. The dominoes were falling faster now, each revelation triggering the next. Marcus's desperate criminal attempt had accelerated everything. He'd have a few days in jail to think about his choices, while I had the same time to decide how to completely restructure a system that had enabled toxicity for far too long. Looking at Emma's butterfly painting on the refrigerator, I thought about transformation. Butterflies had to dissolve completely in their cocoons before emerging as something new. Maybe that's what was happening to my family, a complete dissolution, before potential rebirth. Or maybe some things were too poisoned to transform and simply needed to end. Either way, the house of cards was collapsing, and everyone who'd built their lives on my hidden foundation was about to experience what it meant to stand on their own merit for the first time in years. Sunday morning descended with the kind of pristine Florida sunshine that made everything seem possible. Emma and I had driven through the night, arriving at my Miami beach house just as the sky painted itself in shades of coral and gold. She'd slept most of the way, clutching her stuffed dolphin, unaware that we were fleeing the chaos her uncle had created. The house stood exactly as I'd left it 6 months ago. White stucco walls, hurricane glass windows reflecting the ocean palm trees swaying in the gentle breeze. This was my escape. The one piece of my success I'd allowed myself to own openly, though none of my family knew it existed. Here, 300 miles from their toxicity, Emma and I could breathe. Mommy, is this a hotel? Emma asked, her eyes wide as we pulled into the circular driveway. No, baby, this is our special place, our beach house where we can stay whenever we need a vacation. Her squeal of delight echoed through the morning air as she spotted the ocean beyond the back deck. I'd bought this place 2 years ago, paying cash, keeping it as our sanctuary when the weight of carrying family secrets became unbearable. The deed was in my name alone, no trusts or LLCs to complicate ownership. I just finished unpacking our essentials when movement on the security monitor caught my attention. My blood froze as familiar figures appeared on the screen. There, on my private property, my parents stood with Sarah and several aunts and uncles, setting up what looked like party supplies on my back deck. How had they found this place? The answer came through the open windows as Sarah's voice carried on the breeze. Marcus really came through before they arrested him. Who knew Jordan had been hiding a gold mine like this? My hands trembled as I watched them spread across my property like they owned it. Coolers appeared, beach chairs were arranged, and my father was actually manning a portable grill he'd brought. They were having a family gathering at my secret refuge, celebrating their discovery of what they assumed was another asset to claim. Stay here, sweetheart, I told Emma, setting her up with coloring books in the secure playroom. Mommy needs to handle something outside. I stepped onto my own deck to find 20 relatives who disowned me making themselves at home. The conversation stopped as they noticed me, but instead of shame or surprise, I saw calculation in their eyes. Jordan. My mother's voice dripped false warmth. We were just discussing how proud we are that you've done so well for yourself, though keeping secrets from family isn't very loving, is it? This is private property, I stated clearly. You're all trespassing. Leave now. My father laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. Family doesn't trespass, Jordan. Besides, Marcus found some very interesting paperwork before his little misunderstanding with the law. Seems like family assets have been hidden from family members. This house is mine, purchased with my money in my name only. You have no claim here. Sarah stepped forward, her legal education making her the family spokesperson. Actually, that's debatable. Assets acquired during the period when you were receiving family support could be subject to equitable distribution. We've been supporting you for years, and now we find out you've been hoarding wealth. The delusion was so complete, I almost couldn't respond. They'd rewritten history in their minds, transforming my support of them into their support of me. The monthly payments they received became invisible, while my simple lifestyle became evidence of their generosity. I want you all to leave, I repeated, now. Or what? Aunt Patricia chimed in. You'll call the police on your own family. How would that look, Jordan? Single mother has her elderly parents arrested for visiting. Before I could respond, my neighbor emerged from the house next door. Judge Patricia Coleman retired after 30 years. On the bench, walked over with the measured steps of someone who'd spent a lifetime commanding respect. Is everything all right, Jordan? Judge Coleman asked, her eyes taking in the scene with professional assessment. My estranged family has shown up uninvited. I explained. I've asked them to leave. Then they should leave, the judge said simply, her voice carrying the authority of decades in courtrooms. This is clearly private property, and Jordan has made her wishes known. My father puffed up with indignation. And who are you to interfere in family matters? Judge Coleman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Someone who's watched Jordan quietly donate millions to local charities while living modestly. Someone who's seen her fund scholarships, support battered women's shelters, and transform lives without seeking recognition, and someone who knows trespassing law quite well. The revelation of my charitable work seemed to stun my family more than the judge's presence. They exchanged glances, recalculating, trying to fit this information into their narrative of me as the family failure. Millions! Sarah's voice cracked slightly. That's impossible. She works as a waitress. I haven't waitressed in 5 years, I said quietly. Not since I sold my medical software company for $20 million. The silence that followed was complete. Even the ocean seemed to pause its rhythm. I watched as understanding dawned on their faces, followed quickly by greed. 20 million, my mother whispered. But the house payments, Marcus's money, Sarah's tuition, all came from me. Every penny you've received for the past 2 years has been from my accounts filtered through trusts to spare your pride. The words felt like stones I'd been carrying finally being set down. The house Dad's trying to sell, I bought it. The investments you brag about, I manage them. The pension increases, the insurance upgrades, the business funding, all me. You're lying, my father snarled, but uncertainty colored his tone. Judge Coleman spoke again. I've witnessed several of Jordan's charitable transactions personally. She's telling the truth. Now I believe she asked you to leave her property. In Florida, that's all the warning required before criminal trespass charges apply. My family didn't move, still processing the revelation. Sarah, ever the opportunist, shifted tactics. Jordan, if this is true, then we need to talk about family obligations. You've been hiding assets that should have been disclosed. There are legal implications. The only legal implication, Judge Coleman interrupted, is that you're about to be arrested if you don't leave. I'm happy to call my former colleagues at the department. You can't just kick us out. My father stepped forward aggressively. Not when we've discovered what she's been hiding. That money came from family connections, family name. My software had nothing to do with family. I cut him off. I built it alone, coded through nights while Emma slept, pitched to investors who'd never heard our name. You dismissed my work, called me a failure, said I'd never amount to anything. The only family connection to my success is that I succeeded despite you. Aunt Patricia tried a different approach. Jordan, sweetie, let's not be hasty. We're all emotional. Why don't we sit down and discuss this like adults? Surely you understand that family shares good fortune. Like you shared with Emma and me, like when you called her a bastard and planned legal strategies to ensure she'd inherit nothing. I pulled out my phone showing screenshots from their group chat. Judge Coleman, would you like to see what my loving family has been planning? The judge reviewed the messages, her expression growing darker with each swipe. This is systematic harassment and conspiracy to commit financial abuse. You have grounds for restraining orders against all of them. She can't do that, Sarah protested. We're family. The family doesn't mean immunity from consequences, Judge Coleman replied. I've sentenced family members who've done far less to each other than what I'm seeing here. My mother started crying, but they were tactical tears, the kind she'd perfected over years of manipulation. Jordan, please, we're struggling. Your father has debts, serious ones. People are threatening us. Whatever happened between us, surely you don't want to see your parents hurt? I've been protecting you from Dad's debts for 2 years, I said flatly. Every payment to those dangerous people came from accounts I funded. But instead of gratitude or even awareness, you spent that time planning to disinherit my daughter. A sound from inside caught my attention. Emma had ventured out of the playroom and stood at the glass door watching the crowd of relatives she barely knew. My family's eyes locked onto her with an intensity that made my maternal instincts flare. Is that her? Aunt Patricia asked, her voice carrying judgment even now. The child. Her name is Emma, I said firmly, moving to block their view, and she's worth more than all of you combined. Jordan. My father's voice had shifted to desperation. If you really have money, you have to help us. They'll hurt your mother. They showed up with photos, they know her routines. I know about the threats, I interrupted. My lawyers are already working on it, but my help no longer comes with your presence in our lives. I'll handle Dad's debts, ensure Mom's safety, but this is the last time any of you come near Emma or me. You can't cut us off, Sarah screeched. We have rights. Florida has filial responsibility laws, which don't apply when the parent has engaged in abuse or harassment, Judge Coleman corrected, which your messages clearly demonstrate. Jordan, would you like me to call the police now? I looked at my family, really looked at them. These people who'd raised me, who I'd tried so hard to love and support despite their cruelty. They stood on my property, uninvited, demanding money they'd already been receiving, threatening legal action for assets they'd never earned, all while showing no remorse for their treatment of Emma and me. Yes, I said quietly. Please call them. The next hour unfolded like a surreal dream. Police arrived and professionally but firmly removed my trespassing relatives. My father shouted about lawsuits and family betrayal. Sarah threatened legal action while being escorted away. My mother wailed about disgrace while clutching her designer purse paid for with my money. The aunts and uncles scattered like roaches when lights turn on, suddenly remembering urgent appointments elsewhere. Through it all, Judge Coleman stayed by my side, a steady presence of legitimate authority. As the last police car pulled away, she turned to me with kind eyes. You've been carrying them for years, haven't you? She asked gently. I thought if I helped them enough, quietly enough, they'd eventually love us. The admission felt hollow now. I thought money could buy what Emma and I actually needed: acceptance. Money reveals character, it doesn't create it, the judge said. You've seen their true selves now. What matters is what you do next. Emma appeared at my side, slipping her small hand into mine. Are the mean people gone, Mommy? Yes, baby, they're gone. Good, she said simply. They made you sad. I don't like people who make you sad. Judge Coleman smiled at Emma. You have a wise daughter, Jordan. She knows what really matters. As we watched the sun climb higher over the ocean, I felt something shift inside me. The weight I'd carried, the secrets I'd held, the family I'd tried to save despite their toxicity, it all felt lighter somehow. Here in Miami, with Emma's hand in mine and a neighbor who'd shown more kindness than blood relatives, I realized I'd been looking for family in the wrong places. Judge Coleman, I said suddenly, would you and your wife like to join us for lunch? I'm thinking of grilling on the deck, maybe making a real family gathering out of this day. Her smile was warm and genuine. We'd be honored. And please call me Pat. Real family doesn't need formality. As we prepared lunch together, Emma chattering happily about seashells and sandcastles, I thought about the family I'd lost today versus the family I was choosing to build. One was bound by blood and poisoned by greed. The other was connected by kindness and strengthened by respect. The ocean breeze carried away the last echoes of my biological family's threats and demands. In its place came Emma's laughter, Pat's stories from the bench, and the sizzle of fresh fish on the grill. This was what family should sound like: joy without judgment, gathering without greed, love without conditions. My phone buzzed with messages from David updating me on legal proceedings and financial protections. I silenced it. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and logistics, restraining orders, and trust dissolutions. But today was for Emma and me and the family we chose here in our beach house sanctuary, where love mattered more than blood and kindness counted more than cash. Monday morning shattered the peace of our beach sanctuary with the harsh buzz of the doorbell at 7 sharp. Through the security monitor, I saw Sarah standing at my front door in her sharpest suit briefcase in hand, flanked by two men in expensive suits who could only be attorneys. Her face wore the cold expression of professional determination. I'd seen her practice in law school back when I was secretly funding her education. "Emma, sweetheart, why don't you have breakfast on the back deck?" I suggested, not wanting her to witness whatever vitriol was about to unfold. "You can watch the dolphins play." She skipped off happily with her cereal bowl while I steeled myself for confrontation. Opening the door, I found Sarah already holding official-looking documents. "Jordan Peterson," she said formally as if we were strangers, "you're being served with an emergency injunction for financial elder abuse and asset concealment. You have 48 hours to respond." I took the papers without reaching for them, forcing her to step forward onto my property to hand them over. Financial elder abuse against parents. I've been supporting for years. Your secret manipulation of family assets constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty. Sarah continued, clearly reciting prepared language. By hiding your wealth while accepting family support, you've committed fraud. These documents freeze all your accounts pending investigation. One of her accompanying lawyers, an older man with predatory eyes, added, "We've also notified the major banks. Any attempts to move money will be reported to authorities." I glanced through the paperwork, noting the creative legal theories Sarah had constructed. She'd painted a picture of me as a manipulative daughter who'd hidden millions while draining family resources, accepting support under false pretenses. The narrative was so twisted from reality that it almost impressed me. "You realize this is all fabrication," I said calmly. "I have documentation of every penny I've given this family." "Documentation that proves you hid assets while accepting support," Sarah countered. "Every month you took family dinners, hand-me-downs for Emma birthday gifts while sitting on 20 million. That's fraud, Jordan." "I took nothing. I paid for those family dinners through the restaurant accounts I controlled. The hand-me-downs were items I donated to charity in your names. The birthday gifts were purchased with gift cards I'd sent anonymously." I met her gaze steadily. "Would you like to see the receipts?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face before the professional mask returned. "Save it for court. In the meantime, your accounts are frozen. We've also filed liens against this property and any others in your name." "On what grounds?" "Unjust enrichment. Family resources that should have gone to education, investment, and growth were diverted to support you while you hoarded wealth. Mom and Dad could have retired comfortably if they hadn't been carrying you." The revision of history was breathtaking. My parents, who'd been broke before my intervention, were now portrayed as sacrificing martyrs. My secret support had been erased, replaced with a fiction of family generosity toward an ungrateful daughter. "There's more?" The second lawyer, a younger woman with ambitious eyes, stepped forward. "We've contacted local media about this story. Millionaire daughter hides fortune while elderly parents struggle. The public loves a good family betrayal narrative, especially when the daughter is a single mother who had a child out of wedlock." Sarah added, her voice dripping satisfaction. "Public opinion matters in these cases, Jordan. Judges are human too." I heard movement behind me and turned to find Judge Coleman approaching from her morning walk. She'd clearly noticed the congregation at my door and decided to investigate. "Good morning, Jordan. Is everything all right?" Her eyes took in the lawyers with professional assessment. "My sister is serving me with fraudulent legal papers," I said simply. "I'd be careful about defamation," Sarah warned. "These are legitimate legal documents filed in—" "Sir, filed in which jurisdiction?" Judge Coleman interrupted. "Because if you're attempting to enforce Florida law while the alleged actions took place in New York, you might have a jurisdictional problem. I assume you've properly established venue." Sarah's lawyers exchanged glances. The older man cleared his throat. "The defendant owns property in Florida, establishing sufficient contacts." Owning vacation property doesn't automatically establish jurisdiction for financial matters originating in another state," Judge Coleman observed mildly. First year civil procedure, but I'm sure accomplished attorneys like yourselves knew that. Who are you? Sarah demanded. Someone who spent 30 years watching lawyers like you twist the law for personal gain, Pat replied. Also, someone who knows that freezing accounts requires an actual court order, not just filed papers. May I see this supposed freeze order? Sarah handed over a document that Pat reviewed with increasing amusement. This is a request for an emergency order, not an actual order. No judge has signed this. You've essentially handed Jordan a wish list of what you want, not what any court has granted. The banks will freeze based on notification of pending litigation, the younger lawyer insisted. Some might temporarily, others will laugh you out of their offices, and filing false notifications with financial institutions, that's a federal crime. Pat handed the papers back. You might want to reconsider your strategy. Sarah's face flushed with anger. Stay out of this. Jordan's manipulations have destroyed our family. Your greed destroyed your family. I interrupted, finally allowing my anger to surface. I gave you everything. Education, homes, security, future. And you repaid it by calling my daughter a bastard and planning to disinherit her. You gave us nothing. Sarah exploded, her professional composure cracking. You hid in your apartment playing victim while we struggled. While you lived in homes, I paid for drove cars, I funded, attended schools I covered. Every single thing you have exists because I provided it. I pulled out my phone. Would you like to call Bank of America together? Ask about the trust that pays your student loans, or chase about the account funding Marcus's ventures. How about Wells Fargo, where Dad's pension originates? Lies and manipulation, Sarah insisted, but her voice wavered. Emma's voice drifted from the back deck singing a song about dolphins. The sound seemed to center me, reminding me what truly mattered. You have 48 hours to withdraw these false claims, I said firmly. After that, my actual lawyers will respond with defamation suits charges for filing false documents and complete disclosure of every penny I've provided. The media story will be quite different than what you've planned. You wouldn't dare, Sarah hissed. The family shame? The family shame is that you're attacking the person who saved you all from poverty, while planning to rob a 5-year-old of any inheritance. Yes, I think that story will play very well in the media. The older lawyer tugged at Sarah's arm. We should regroup, reassess the documentation. No, Sarah yanked away. She doesn't get to win. Not after everything. Everything, what I demanded. Everything I've done for you or everything you've done to us. You got pregnant, she screamed, completely losing control. You ruined everything Mom cried for months. Dad had to face his business partners knowing his daughter was a whore. And you just kept that baby like it was something to be proud of. There it was, the real poison at the heart of their hatred. Not money, not deception, but the simple fact that I'd chosen to have Emma without their approval, without a ring on my finger or a husband they could approve of. Yes, I said softly, I kept my baby. I chose love over your conditional acceptance. And that beautiful, brilliant little girl is worth more than your entire toxic worldview. Ms. Summers, Judge Coleman addressed Sarah formally. I strongly advise you to leave this property immediately. What I've witnessed here constitutes harassment and potentially extortion. Continue down this path, and you'll face criminal charges along with civil ones. Sarah gathered her papers with shaking hands, her lawyers already retreating to their car. This isn't over, Jordan. That money belongs to the family, and we'll prove it. You'll lose everything, including her. She gestured toward where Emma's voice carried on the breeze. The only thing I'd lose by losing you, I replied, is the weight of carrying people who never carried me. They left in a squeal of tires and wounded pride. Judge Coleman stayed until their car disappeared from view. You know she'll make good on her threats, Pat warned. Cornered narcissists are dangerous, especially when money's involved. I know, but I'm done enabling them. Done hiding my success to protect their egos. Done pretending their cruelty is love. Good. You'll need that strength for what's coming. She paused thoughtfully. I know a colleague who specializes in financial abuse cases. She'd be very interested in a situation where hidden generosity is being reframed as elder abuse. I have David, my corporate attorney. You need someone who understands family dynamics and financial abuse patterns. Trust me, Jordan, this kind of case requires specialized knowledge. I accepted her recommendation gratefully. As she left to make calls, I found Emma on the deck, surrounded by drawings of dolphins and families. Look, Mommy. She held up a picture. This is us, and this is Judge Pat, and this is our new family. The dolphins are our pets. Looking at her innocent artwork, I realized she'd already figured out what took me years to understand. Family wasn't about blood or obligation. It was about who showed up with kindness, who offered support without conditions, who loved you without requiring you to shrink yourself to fit their expectations. My phone buzzed with messages from various banks, some confirming temporary holds based on Sarah's false notifications. David was already working to reverse them, but the inconvenience was real. Sarah had fired the first official shot in what would clearly be a war. But sitting there with Emma, watching the ocean and feeling the morning sun, I felt oddly at peace. Yes, there would be battles ahead. Yes, my biological family would likely drag our names through mud and courts alike. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't fighting alone or in shadow. I had truth on my side, documentation of years of generosity, and most importantly, I had the family I'd chosen, Emma, Pat, David, and others who'd seen my worth beyond my bank account. The family I'd been born into might be determined to destroy me, but the family I'd built would help me stand strong. Sarah's threats echoed in my mind, but they no longer held power. She could file all the papers she wanted, tell whatever lies soothed her conscience. The truth had a way of surfacing, especially when backed by bank records and receipts. And when it did, the family narrative would finally crumble, revealing the reality they'd worked so hard to deny. Emma climbed into my lap, snuggling close. Are you sad, Mommy? No, baby, just thinking about how lucky we are. Because we have each other, and that's worth more than anything else in the world. She nodded sagely, then returned to her coloring. I held her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the weight of her trust and love. Whatever legal battles lay ahead, whatever media storms Sarah tried to create this moment, was worth it all. Emma and I building our life in the sunshine, free from the shadow of conditional love and toxic obligation. The war was beginning, but for the first time I was ready to fight it in the light. Tuesday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor to my Miami sanctuary. Thomas Reeves, the private investigator I'd hired months ago for routine business security, stood at my door with a thick folder and an expression that suggested the contents were worse than I'd imagined. Ms. Peterson, I need to show you what I've found about your father, he said without preamble. It's extensive and it's dangerous. I invited him in, settling Emma with her favorite movie in the playroom before joining Thomas in my home office. He spread documents across my desk like evidence in a crime scene, which I was beginning to realize they essentially were. Your father owes $800,000, but not to typical loan sharks. Thomas began pulling out surveillance photos. These are the Kozlov brothers' Russian organized crime. They don't break legs, Ms. Peterson. They break lives. The images showed my father meeting with men who looked like they'd stepped out of a crime thriller. Their faces were hard, their suits expensive, their presence menacing even in still photographs. My father looked small next to them, desperate, a man drowning in his own choices. This meeting was 3 weeks ago. Thomas continued pointing to timestamps. Your father promised them something specific, his rich daughter's money. He told them you're worth $20 million and that he could deliver access to at least $5 million within 60 days. My stomach turned. He's selling me to the mob. Essentially, yes, but it gets worse. Thomas pulled out bank records. every anonymous gift you've sent for the past 2 years. He's diverted 90% to gambling. The mortgage payments you thought you were making, he convinced your mother to take out a second mortgage, told her it was for investments, then gambled that money too. I stared at the evidence of systematic deception. While I'd believed I was providing security, he'd been creating deeper insecurity, using my gifts to fund his addiction while letting my mother believe they were struggling due to the economy. Your mother has been selling family heirlooms. Thomas showed me pawn shop receipts, jewelry, china, anything valuable. She thinks they're broke because business is bad. Meanwhile, your father received over 1.2 million from your trusts and lost every penny at underground poker games. How did she not notice? He's been intercepting bank statements, creating false ones on his computer. Your mother, God bless her, still trusts him completely. She has no idea about the gambling, the debts, or where the money you've sent actually went. The depth of betrayal was staggering. I'd enabled his addiction while thinking I was helping funded his self-destruction while my mother suffered in ignorance. Every sacrifice she'd made, every treasured item she'd sold had been unnecessary if he'd simply used my money as intended. There's something else, Thomas said carefully. The Kozlovs aren't patient people. When your father missed last week's payment, they sent him a message. He showed me another photo. My mother's car photographed in the church parking lot with a red X spray painted on the windshield. She stood next to it, looking confused and frightened, probably thinking it was random vandalism. They're escalating, Thomas explained. This is their warning shot. Next time won't be paint. What about police protection? Your father refused to report it. Told your mother it was probably teenagers. He knows that involving law enforcement means admitting to illegal gambling and mob connections. He's choosing to risk her safety rather than face consequences. I thought about my mother, difficult and judgmental as she was now in danger because of secrets within secrets. She'd sold her grandmother's pearls thinking they were poor while my father threw away millions on cards and dice. How long before the Kozlovs lose patience entirely? Based on their pattern, 2 weeks, maybe 3. They'll start with property damage, escalate to personal intimidation, and eventually, he didn't need to finish. Can we pay them off? It's not just about money anymore. Your father made promises about ongoing access to your wealth. They see you as a long-term resource, not a one-time payment. Even if you cleared his current debt, they'd manufacture new ones to keep the revenue stream flowing. I felt trapped between my father's deception and my mother's danger. The man who'd called me a disgrace had sold my name to criminals. The woman who'd called Emma a mistake was now a target because of his mistakes. What do you recommend? FBI, Thomas said simply. This crosses state lines, involves organized crime, and threatens interstate commerce through the gambling operations. It's federal jurisdiction, but that means your father faces serious prison time. And if we don't involve federal authorities, then you're negotiating with the Russian mob while your father continues gambling and your mother remains in danger. There's no winning scenario that doesn't involve law enforcement. Emma's laughter drifted from the playroom, a reminder of innocence in the midst of corruption. How could I protect her from this? How could I shield her from learning that her grandfather had essentially put a price tag on our heads? There's one more thing. Thomas pulled out a final set of documents. Your father's been in contact with someone claiming to be a wealth management advisor who specializes in family reconciliation. This person has been coaching him on legal strategies to access your money. Let me guess, Sarah introduced them. Actually, no. This predates Sarah's current legal actions. Your father's been planning this for months long before Thanksgiving. The holiday confrontation might have been orchestrated to create a paper trail of family conflict, making it easier to claim abandonment or manipulation later. The calculation behind it all was breathtaking. While I'd been secretly supporting them, they'd been secretly plotting to take everything. The Thanksgiving expulsion wasn't emotional, it was strategic. Create distance, claim abandonment, then swoop in for the money. The advisor he's been working with, Thomas continued, is connected to several elder abuse lawsuits where adult children's assets were successfully seized. They've refined a playbook, and your family is following it step by step. Except they didn't count on me documenting everything. Or on the Russian mob getting impatient. Your father's created a collision course between his legal schemes and his illegal debts. When those worlds meet, everyone in proximity gets hurt. I made my decision. Set up a meeting with the FBI. Quietly, I need to protect my mother even if it means destroying my father. What about Sarah's legal threats? Let her file whatever she wants. When the FBI reveals Dad's mob connections and gambling addiction, her elder abuse claims will look like what they are: opportunistic greed built on lies. Thomas gathered his materials. I'll arrange the federal meeting for tomorrow. In the meantime, perhaps your mother should take a sudden vacation. Something to get her out of harm's way. She'd never leave without my father. Then we need to move fast. The Kozlovs won't wait for legal proceedings to conclude. After Thomas left, I sat in my office surrounded by evidence of my father's betrayal. The man who'd preached honor had none. The patriarch who demanded respectability was consorting with criminals. The father who'd called me a disgrace had disgraced himself beyond redemption. But it was the systematic nature that hurt most. This wasn't a desperate man making bad choices in crisis. This was calculated deception spanning years, using my love and money as tools for his addiction while endangering everyone around him. My phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. Jordan Sarah's escalated her legal filing. She's now claiming your father's gambling is a symptom of elder abuse that you drove him to desperate measures by withholding support. She's painting his debts as your fault. She doesn't know about the mob connections. If she does, she's ignoring them. Her filing suggests his gambling is a response to financial stress you created. She's requesting immediate asset seizure to pay his debts and protect your parents from harm you've allegedly caused. The twisted logic was almost artistic. Take my father's years of addiction funded by my money and transform it into my fault for not giving more openly. Make his mob debts my responsibility because I'd hidden my wealth. David, I'm meeting with the FBI tomorrow. My father's in deep with Russian organized crime. He's been using my anonymous support to fund illegal gambling while promising mobsters access to my money. Whatever Sarah thinks she's doing, she's about to step into a federal investigation. Jesus, Jordan, this is beyond family dysfunction. This is criminal enterprise. I know, and somehow I'm still trying to save them from consequences they've earned. That evening, I sat with Emma on the beach watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. She built sandcastles while I built plans to save a mother who'd rejected me from a father who'd betrayed me. Mommy, why do people do mean things? Emma asked suddenly, her innocent question cutting straight to the heart of everything. Sometimes people get sick in their hearts and minds, I said carefully. They make choices that hurt others, even people they should love. Like Grandpa. Her perception, as always, was sharper than I'd hoped. Yes, baby, like Grandpa. Will he get better? I thought about the FBI meeting tomorrow, the inevitable arrests, the public scandal that would follow. My father would likely spend his remaining years in federal prison, while my mother faced the dual trauma of his betrayal and his absence. I don't know, I admitted, but we'll make sure Grandma is safe and we'll keep building our happy life here. With Judge Pat and the Dolphins. With everyone who truly loves us. She nodded and returned to her sandcastle, satisfied with the simple truth that we would be okay. I wished I shared her confidence. Tomorrow would begin a process that would destroy my family in order to save them, expose every secret in the harsh light of federal investigation. But as I watched Emma play in the fading light, I knew I had no choice. The house of cards my father had built with my money was collapsing, and I could either let it crush my mother or control the demolition. Neither option felt like winning, but at least one might keep her alive. The waves rolled in with their eternal rhythm, indifferent to human schemes and suffering. Tomorrow would bring federal agents and difficult truths. Tonight I had my daughter and the sunset, and the knowledge that sometimes love means destroying someone's illusions to save their life. My father had gambled everything on the belief that I'd remain the family disgrace, too weak to fight back, too desperate for approval to expose their secrets. He'd bet wrong. The dealer was about to call his hand, and he'd discover that the house he'd wagered belonged to the daughter he'd thrown away. Wednesday dawned with my phone exploding in a cacophony of notifications. Sarah had made good on her threat, and seemingly overnight, our family drama had become Miami's trending story. Millionaire daughter abandons struggling parents, scrolled across news tickers, accompanied by a photo Sarah must have provided my parents looking frail and worried, taken at just the angle to emphasize their age and vulnerability. I was reviewing the media assault with David over video call when Emma bounded into the room. "Mommy, there are people with cameras outside." Through the windows, I could see news vans gathering on the public street beyond my property. Sarah had not only gone to the media, but had given them my address, turning our sanctuary into a circus. "We need to stay inside today, sweetheart," I told Emma, trying to keep my voice calm. "Just until the people outside go away." David's expression was grim through the laptop screen. "She's given interviews to 3 local stations and 2 newspapers. The narrative is consistent. Elderly parents sacrificed everything for ungrateful daughter who secretly hoarded millions while they suffered." And my side of the story: "Legally, I advise saying nothing yet, but publicly, your silence is being interpreted as guilt." Before I could respond, my phone rang with an unknown number. Against David's gesture to ignore it, something made me answer. "Is this Jordan Peterson?" The voice was female, nervous but determined. Yes. "My name is Rosa Martinez. You don't know me, but you saved my daughter's life. I just saw the news, and I cannot let these lies stand." My mind raced through the anonymous donations I'd made over the years. "I'm sorry, I don't..." 3 years ago, my Isabella needed cancer treatment we couldn't afford. An anonymous donor covered everything over $200,000. The foundation lawyer slipped, once mentioned your name. "I've kept your secret, but seeing what your family is doing to you..." No, it's time people knew the truth. "Rosa, I appreciate that, but..." "I've already called the news station. Others have too. Did you know there's a whole network of families you've helped? We've stayed quiet out of respect for your privacy, but not anymore. Not when they're painting you as some selfish monster." She hung up before I could protest. Within an hour, the narrative began shifting. The same news station that had led with millionaire daughter's betrayal was now running "Breaking news, anonymous philanthropist exposed." Rosa appeared on camera, medical bills in hand, tears streaming down her face. "Jordan Peterson saved my baby when no one else would help. She asked for nothing, wanted no recognition. While her family calls her selfish, she's donated millions to strangers in need." The floodgates opened. More people came forward with receipts, documentation, stories of quiet generosity. The single mother whose rent I'd paid for a year while she finished nursing school. The veteran whose prosthetic leg I'd funded. The food bank that received monthly donations that kept them operational during lean times. "She specifically asked us never to reveal her name," the food bank director told reporters. "Even when we wanted to put up a plaque, she refused. Said helping people shouldn't be about recognition." My phone rang again. This time it was Christopher, Emma's father. We'd maintained cordial distance since Emma's birth, respecting each other's boundaries while co-parenting from afar. "Jordan, I'm flying down from Boston," he said without preamble. "The media is starting to dig into Emma's background. I won't let our daughter become tabloid fodder." "Christopher, you don't need to." "Yes, I do. I've respected your wishes to handle things alone for 5 years. But if your family wants to play dirty, they need to know Emma has 2 parents who will protect her." The relief I felt was unexpected. I'd carried this burden alone for so long, the idea of someone else stepping up felt foreign, but welcome. By noon, the story had transformed completely. Jordan the Giver was trending on social media. Screenshots of charity receipts flooded Twitter. Someone had created a spreadsheet documenting over 4 million in confirmed anonymous donations I'd made over 5 years. Sarah tried to counter appearing on the afternoon news, looking increasingly desperate. These donations don't negate the fact that she hid assets while accepting family support. My parents are still facing eviction because of her deception. But the interviewer, now armed with new information, pushed back. Ms. Summers' records show the house your parents live in was purchased by a trust linked to your sister. How can they face eviction from a property she owns? Sarah's carefully constructed narrative crumbled on live television. That's a complex situation requiring legal interpretation. It seems quite simple, the interviewer continued. Your sister bought your parents a house, funded their lifestyle for years, and donated millions to charity, all while living modestly herself. How exactly is she the villain here? The interview ended with Sarah stammering about ongoing litigation before the camera mercifully cut away. Within minutes, public opinion had shifted decisively. Comments poured in, supporting me, condemning my family's greed, sharing their own stories of toxic relatives. Judge Coleman called to check on us. The court of public opinion is ruling in your favor, she observed, but be prepared for your family to lash out. Narcissistic injury makes people dangerous. She was right. As the afternoon wore on and the narrative shifted further from their control, my family's response became increasingly frantic. Marcus, apparently released on bail, gave a rambling interview where he admitted to attempting to break into my apartment, but claimed I'd driven him to desperation by hoarding family resources. The interviewer's response was brutal. Mr. Peterson, you're saying your sister's secret charity work justified attempted burglary. My mother appeared next, and for the first time I saw cracks in her certainty. Reporters had informed her about the house ownership, the trust funds, the years of support I'd provided. Her face showed confusion, fighting with ingrained prejudice. I don't understand, she said on camera. Robert handles our finances. He said the house was paid off through his investments. Are you saying Jordan? The reporter showed her documented proof. Watching my mother's worldview shatter on live television was painful despite everything. She'd built her identity around being the long-suffering mother of a disgraceful daughter. Learning she'd been living on that daughter's charity while condemning her created visible cognitive dissonance. But she had Emma without marriage, my mother said weakly, clinging to the last justification for their cruelty. The shame it brought our family. The shame, the reporter said carefully, seems to be in how your family treated a generous daughter and innocent grandchild. Christopher arrived that evening, and Emma's joy at seeing her father was beautiful to witness. He'd grown into the man I'd hoped he'd become, a successful pediatric surgeon who'd respected my need for independence while never abandoning his daughter. I've been documenting everything, he told me after Emma went to bed. Every interaction with your family, every threat, every cruel word about Emma. I didn't interfere before because you asked me not to, but I never stopped protecting her legally. You knew about their behavior. I've known since Emma's first birthday when they returned her gift unopened. I hired someone to monitor the situation. Make sure their toxicity never physically reached her. When your brother tried to break into your apartment, I was already preparing restraining orders. The quiet protection he'd provided, respecting my autonomy while safeguarding our daughter, made my eyes burn with unexpected tears. I thought I was alone in this fight, but Christopher had been a silent guardian all along. There's something else, he said gently. I know you've been managing everything alone, being both parents, providing everything, but Jordan, you don't have to anymore. I'm here now and I'm not leaving until this is resolved. That night, as the media storm continued outside, our small family felt more complete than it had in years. Emma fell asleep between us on the couch, safe and loved while the world debated our worth. The news had shifted to examining family dynamics, toxic relationships, and the price of generosity in a grabbing world. My phone lit up with a message from David. Sarah's withdrawn the elder abuse filing. Her law firm dropped her as a client after the media exposure. Your father's lawyer is requesting a meeting, claims to have urgent information about your safety. The war wasn't over, but the battlefield had changed. Public opinion had shifted the power dynamic. My family's weapons of shame and secrecy had been neutralized by truth and documentation. Now they were exposed, their greed and cruelty laid bare for judgment. But as I looked at Emma sleeping peacefully, Christopher standing guard, and messages of support from strangers whose lives I'd touched, I realized something profound. The family I'd lost had never truly been mine. They'd been a biological accident, a cosmic lottery that placed me among people who saw love as conditional and support as transactional. The family I'd chosen and built, Rosa Martinez calling reporters to defend me, Judge Coleman offering wisdom and protection, Christopher stepping up without being asked, the hundreds of people sharing stories of how small acts of kindness had changed their lives, even David working through the night to protect us legally. This was real family people who showed up not for money or obligation, but because love demanded nothing less. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, federal investigations, and whatever desperate moves my biological family attempted. But tonight, surrounded by chosen family and public support, I felt richer than any bank account could make me. The family disgrace had become the family guardian, and the truth had finally set us all free. Thursday morning arrived with federal agents at my door, but this time they weren't here for me. Agent Jennifer Russo from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division stood with her partner, both looking grimly professional as they delivered news that would shatter my family's remaining facades. Ms. Peterson, the media attention on your case triggered an automatic review of your family's tax filings, Agent Russo explained. What we found requires immediate investigation. Your cooperation would be appreciated. I invited them in, settling them in my office, while Christopher took Emma to the beach. Agent Russo spread documents across my table, each one a new revelation of my family's financial deceptions. Your father claimed charitable deductions totaling $800,000 over the past 2 years, she began. The donations match exactly the amounts you anonymously gave to various charities, down to the penny. He had no documentation to prove he made these donations because, of course, he didn't. My stomach sank. He claimed my donations as his own for tax breaks. That's just the beginning. Your sister Sarah claimed this Miami property as her primary residence for homestead exemptions and tax benefits. She's never lived here, correct? She didn't even know it existed until last week. Agent Russo nodded, making notes. Your brother Marcus is more creative. He's written off luxury cars, vacations, and personal expenses as business deductions for companies that exist only on paper. Companies funded entirely by your trust distributions. The scope of their fraud was staggering. While living off my hidden generosity, they'd also used it to commit extensive tax crimes. Every gift I'd given had been twisted into an opportunity for illegal gain. There's a pattern here, Agent Russo's partner added. They've been operating under the assumption that hidden money has no paper trail, but your meticulous documentation of every trust distribution creates a clear timeline of fraud. What kind of penalties are we talking about? Combined over $3 million in back taxes, penalties, and interest. That's if criminal charges aren't pursued. With willful fraud of this magnitude, we're looking at potential prison time for all three. The irony was breathtaking. My family had greedily consumed my support while illegally amplifying it through fraud. Now the very generosity they'd scorned would be their downfall. My phone buzzed with a call from my mother. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I answered. Jordan. Her voice was small, frightened. There are federal agents at the house. They're taking boxes of papers, computers. Robert won't tell me what's happening. Mom, Dad's been claiming my charitable donations as his own for tax deductions. Sarah and Marcus have their own schemes. It's all unraveling. Your donations? Confusion colored her tone, but Robert said the charity work was part of his investment strategy. He showed me receipts. Receipts for donations I made anonymously. He's been lying to you about everything, Mom. The house you live in, I bought it. The monthly income comes from trusts I established. He's taken my support and used it to commit fraud while gambling away the actual cash. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, in a broken whisper, the gambling. You know about the gambling. You knew. I found chips in his pocket last month. When I confronted him, he said it was just poker with friends, nothing serious. But Jordan, if what you're saying is true... It's all true, and there's more. The people Dad owes money to are in it patient. You're in danger, Mom. I heard movement on her end, probably agents requesting her attention. I have to go. They want to ask me questions. Jordan, I don't know what to say. Just tell the truth, Mom. For once in our family, just tell the truth. The call ended, leaving me with the weight of my mother's dawning realization. She'd been a victim too in her way, living in ignorance while my father built a house of criminal cards around her. By afternoon, the local news had picked up the federal investigation. IRS investigates family in millionaire daughter scandal ran across screens, accompanied by footage of agents removing boxes from my parents' house. Sarah's apartment and Marcus's residence received similar treatment. David called with updates. Sarah's in full panic mode. She's claiming attorney-client privilege for everything, but that doesn't cover personal tax fraud. The Florida bar has opened an ethics investigation based on her false legal filings against you. What about Marcus? Arrested again, this time for tax evasion. His bail from the burglary charge is being revoked. The prosecutors are arguing he's a flight risk given the scale of fraud being uncovered. And my father? Missing. He never came home last night, and your mother's filed a missing person report. Given his mob debts, that's concerning. The family that had exiled me on Thanksgiving was systematically destroying itself through its own greed and deception. Each revelation pulled another thread, unraveling years of carefully constructed lies. Christopher returned with Emma as the sun began setting. She was covered in sand and glowing with happiness, blissfully unaware of the family empire crumbling in the background. This was what mattered, I reminded myself. Her innocence, her joy, her protection from the toxic legacy of my bloodline. The news is brutal, Christopher said quietly while Emma showered. Your sister's law firm released a statement distancing themselves from her. Your mother was photographed crying at the federal building. It's a complete meltdown. They brought it on themselves, I said, though my heart ached for my mother's pain. Every crime, every lie, every cruel word. It's all coming due. That evening, Agent Russo called with a stunning development. We've been coordinating with the FBI regarding your father's gambling debts. They've had the Kozlov brothers under surveillance for months. Your father walking into their operation was actually fortunate for our investigation. Fortunate? He became an inadvertent informant. His desperation to access your money led him to make promises he documented extensively. He created a paper trail of their entire operation while trying to convince them of his daughter's wealth. We have enough to take down their entire gambling ring. Is he cooperating? He doesn't have a choice. We found him at a motel preparing to flee the country with what little cash he could scrape together. When faced with federal racketeering charges versus cooperation, he chose to talk. He's been moved to protective custody. The man who'd called me a disgrace was now a federal witness against the Russian mob saved only by the daughter he'd tried to sell to them. The cosmic justice would have been satisfying if it weren't so pathetic. Oh, what about my mother's safety? We're moving her to a secure location tonight. She'll be under protection until the Kozlovs are in custody. Ms. Peterson, your documentation of financial support may have inadvertently saved both your parents' lives. Your father's detailed promises about your wealth gave us the evidence needed to move against a major crime syndicate. After the call, I sat on my deck, watching the ocean, trying to process the complete destruction of the family I'd once desperately wanted to please. In less than a week, they'd gone from comfortable superiority to federal investigation, from judging me to begging for mercy, from security I'd provided to consequences they'd earned. Emma appeared at my side, cuddling into my lap. "Mommy, are you sad?" I considered the question. Was I sad? My father faced prison. My mother faced homelessness. My siblings faced ruin. The family that had raised me was effectively destroyed. "No, baby," I said honestly. "I'm not sad. I'm free." Free from what? From trying to make people love us who never will, from hiding who we are to make others comfortable, from carrying people who wouldn't carry us. She nodded with 5-year-old wisdom, like when you told me to stop sharing my lunch with Billy because he was mean to me. Exactly like that. Christopher joined us, bringing a blanket as the evening cooled. "The FBI wants to interview you tomorrow. They need your financial records to complete the case against the gambling ring. You'll essentially be providing evidence that could imprison your father." I know. Are you okay with that? I thought about all the chances I'd given them, all the secret support that had been twisted into weapons against me. He made his choices. He chose gambling over family crime, over honesty, cruelty over love. I'm just choosing truth over enabling. My phone lit up with messages from extended family, some offering support, others condemning me for destroying the family. I deleted them all unread. Their opinions no longer mattered. The only family that counted was right here. My daughter in my arms, her father standing protective watch, chosen family like Judge Coleman, checking on us, and strangers like Rosa Martinez, fighting for truth. The biological family I'd been born into was finished, brought down by their own greed and my refusal to remain their secret benefactor. From their ashes, I'd build something better, a family based on love without conditions, support without manipulation, and trust without deception. Tomorrow would bring FBI interviews and final revelations. But tonight, I was just a mother holding her daughter, surrounded by people who loved us for who we were, not what we could provide. The family fortune they'd all schemed to steal had become evidence of their crimes, and the family disgrace had become the only one left standing. The waves rolled in with their eternal rhythm, washing away footprints in the sand. Soon the tide of justice would wash away the last remnants of my toxic family, leaving clean sand for new beginnings. Emma yawned against my chest. Christopher's hand found mine in the darkness, and I knew that everything I'd lost was nothing compared to what I'd found. The family's downfall was complete, but my family's rise was just beginning. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect Miami weather that made everything seem possible. Emma's 6th birthday dawned bright and full of promise, her excitement infectious as she bounced on my bed at sunrise. "Mommy, Daddy, it's my birthday. I'm 6 whole years old." Christopher and I exchanged amused glances over her head. He'd extended his stay after everything that had unfolded, and his presence had brought a stability I hadn't realized we'd been missing. Together, we'd planned a small celebration at her favorite beachfront restaurant, keeping it intimate given the ongoing media attention and federal investigations. "Happy birthday, Princess." Christopher lifted her into a spinning hug that made her squeal with delight. "Ready for your special day?" The morning passed in a blur of presents, pancakes shaped like the number 6 and Emma's delighted reaction to each small surprise. Watching her joy, I could almost forget the chaos surrounding our family. Almost. By noon, we arrived at Seaside Breeze, the restaurant where Emma loved watching dolphins while eating her favorite fish tacos. I'd reserved the outdoor patio area, decorating it with balloons and streamers in her favorite colors. A few close friends were invited. Judge Coleman and her wife Rosa Martinez and Isabella, some families from Emma's art class. Small, safe, perfect. Emma was in the middle of showing Isabella her new art set when I noticed movement at the restaurant's entrance. My blood turned to ice as I recognized the figures pushing past the hostess. My parents, Sarah Marcus, somehow out on bail again, and several aunts and uncles. They move like a pack, determined and aggressive. Christopher, I said quietly, already moving to position myself between them and Emma. He saw them too immediately, understanding. "I've got Emma," he murmured smoothly, directing her attention to the dessert table while positioning his body as a shield. My father reached our party first, and the smell of alcohol radiated from him in waves. His appearance was shocking, disheveled, unshaven, with the desperate look of a man with nothing left to lose. Federal protection had apparently ended when he'd decided to violate the terms of his cooperation. "There's my granddaughter," he slurred, stumbling toward Emma. "Come give Grandpa a hug on your birthday." "I don't think so." I stepped directly into his path. "You're drunk, you're uninvited, and you're leaving. Now." "You don't get to keep her from me." His voice rose, drawing attention from other restaurant patrons. "I'm her grandfather. I have rights." "You have no rights here." Christopher appeared beside me, his surgeon's hands steady but ready. "You've never been part of her life, and you're not starting now." My father's face contorted with rage. "You, the bastard who knocked up my daughter and ruined our family name. The man who's raising an incredible daughter while you drink away your problems," Christopher corrected calmly. Sarah pushed forward, her professional appearance marred by the manic gleam in her eyes. The bar investigation had destroyed her career prospects, and she blamed me entirely. "This is a public place. We have every right to be here." "Actually," Judge Coleman's voice cut through the tension as she approached, "this is a private event on a reserved patio. You're trespassing." "Another one of Jordan's bot judges," Sarah sneered. "How convenient." Rosa Martinez bristled. "Nobody's bot. Some of us just recognize good people when we meet them." The situation was escalating rapidly. Emma had noticed the commotion, her birthday joy dimming as she recognized the angry relatives. "Mommy, why is Grandpa here?" That innocent question seemed to snap something in my father. He lunged sideways, trying to get around me to reach Emma. "I'll show you what family means, you ungrateful." His hand rose, whether to grab or strike, I'll never know, because Christopher intercepted him with reflexes honed by years of emergency surgery. In one smooth motion, he caught my father's wrist and redirected his momentum, sending him stumbling harmlessly past us. Security. The restaurant manager appeared with 2 guards, having watched the situation develop. "These people need to leave immediately." "We're not going anywhere." My mother spoke for the first time, her voice shrill with desperation. "That's our granddaughter. We have every right to see her." "The granddaughter you called a mistake?" I asked coldly. "The child you plan to disinherit, the innocent girl you've ignored for 6 years." "We were wrong," she said, but her eyes were on Christopher, not Emma. "We see that now. Families should stick together, especially in hard times." "Hard times you created," Christopher said firmly, "through fraud, gambling, and cruelty." Marcus made his move, then probably thinking we were all distracted by my parents. He darted toward the gift table, where Emma's presents were displayed, likely hoping to grab something valuable. What he grabbed instead was the attention of an off-duty police officer dining nearby who'd been watching the entire scene unfold. "Sir, step away from the table," the officer commanded, hand moving to his radio. "Those are family gifts," Marcus protested, even as he backed away. "I helped pay for them." "With what money?" I asked. "The funds you stole through tax fraud or the salary from businesses that never existed?" Emma was crying now, clinging to Christopher as her birthday dissolved into chaos. Isabella held her hand, while Rosa positioned herself protectively nearby. My chosen family forming a barrier around my daughter, while my blood family revealed their true nature in public. Please. My mother tried one last manipulation, tears streaming strategically down her face. We're about to lose everything. The house, the cars, everything. Surely you won't let your own mother end up on the streets. The house I bought, the cars I funded, the everything I provided while you called me a disgrace. I felt years of suppressed anger finally finding voice. You're not losing anything that was ever yours. Ah, heartless, Sarah screeched. You're going to let your parents be homeless? What kind of daughter? The kind who already saved them repeatedly while they plotted against her child, Judge Coleman interrupted. The kind who's showing remarkable restraint right now. The police officer had called for backup, and sirens were already audible in the distance. My father made one last desperate attempt this time, pulling something from his pocket that glinted in the sunlight. For a terrifying moment, I thought it was a weapon. It was a USB drive. Everything's on here, he said, wildly waving it around. All Jordan's financial records, her real net worth details about the trusts. The Russians will pay millions for this information. Unless you want every criminal in Miami knowing exactly how rich you are, you'll pay my debts and set us up for life. The revelation that he'd prepared blackmail material shouldn't have surprised me, but the depth of his betrayal still stung. He'd compiled my private financial information to sell to criminals using my daughter's birthday as the venue for extortion. Christopher's voice was deadly calm. You just threatened my daughter's safety in front of a judge, a police officer, and multiple witnesses. You're done. The backup officers arrived as my father realized his catastrophic mistake. The USB drive was evidence of conspiracy to commit extortion, potentially endangering a minor and violating whatever federal agreements he'd made. He'd destroyed his last chance at leniency in a drunken attempt at birthday blackmail. As the police took statements and arrested my father for public intoxication, criminal threats, and attempted extortion, Sarah and Marcus found themselves also detained for questioning. My mother stood alone, finally seeing the monsters she'd enabled, protected, and chosen over her own daughter. I didn't know, she said numbly, about the threats, the USB, the plan to hurt Emma. I swear I didn't know. But you knew about calling her a bastard. You knew about the disinheritance plots. You knew about the cruelty and chose to participate. I felt empty rather than angry. Not knowing the worst parts doesn't excuse the parts you did know. She looked at Emma, really looked at her for the first time. My daughter, tear-stained but resilient, surrounded by people who actually loved her. The granddaughter she'd rejected was beautiful, kind, intelligent, everything a grandmother should cherish. I'm sorry, my mother whispered, and for the first time it sounded genuine. I'm so very sorry. Sorry doesn't undo 6 years, Christopher said firmly. Sorry doesn't erase the pain you caused. Sorry is just a word when it's not backed by change, and you've had countless opportunities to change. The police escorted my family away as restaurant staff quickly worked to salvage what they could of the party. Emma, showing the resilience that constantly amazed me, tugged on my hand. Mommy, can we still have cake? Isabella wants to sing happy birthday. Of course, baby. We can definitely still have cake. What followed was surreal but healing. Our small chosen family rallied around Emma, turning disaster into determination. Judge Coleman led an enthusiastic round of happy birthday. Rosa produced backup decorations from her car, just in case. And the restaurant manager, appalled by what had happened, comped our entire meal and brought out a special dessert. Emma blew out her candles with a wish I didn't need to hear to understand. Safety, happiness, and a family that chose love over money, support over sabotage, protection over predation. Looking around at the faces surrounding her with genuine affection, I knew her wish had already come true. Christopher pulled me aside as Emma opened presents with renewed enthusiasm. That USB drive your father had. We need to assume he made copies, maybe already distributed some information. You and Emma might need more comprehensive security. I know, I sighed, the weight of my father's final betrayal settling in. He literally tried to auction off our safety to the highest bidder. But he failed, Christopher reminded me. He showed his hand in front of witnesses, gave evidence to police, and proved publicly that cutting him off was the right choice. Emma's safe, you're safe, and your chosen family stood strong. Looking back at my daughter laughing now as Isabella helped her try on a birthday tiara, I felt a strange peace. Yes, my biological family had chosen the nuclear option, attempting to destroy what they couldn't control. But they'd failed spectacularly, revealing themselves while strengthening the bonds of the family I'd built. "Daddy, come see," Emma called out, holding up a picture she'd drawn. "It's our family." The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands on a beach with more people around them. Judge Pat Rosa and Isabella David, the lawyer, she'd decided was an uncle. Not a single biological relative appeared in her family portrait, and that was perfectly fine. We'd survived the birthday disaster, turned an ambush into evidence, and proved that chosen family trumps toxic blood every time. Emma got her cake, her presents, and most importantly, confirmation that she was surrounded by people who would protect her from anyone who meant harm, regardless of shared DNA. As the sun set on her 6th birthday, Emma fell asleep in the car between Christopher and me, clutching her new art supplies and wearing her birthday tiara. She'd weathered a storm no child should face and emerged smiling. Whatever challenges tomorrow brought, whether from federal investigations or my father's threats, we'd face them together. The family that had tried to destroy her birthday had instead cemented our determination to protect her from their poison. Happy birthday, my brave girl. May all your birthdays be free from those who would dim your light. Tuesday morning brought an unexpected media storm, but this time it wasn't orchestrated by Sarah. I was preparing breakfast when Christopher called me to the living room where the news was playing an explosive segment. "You need to see this," he said, turning up the volume. On screen, my mother sat in what appeared to be a comfortable television studio, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue as she spoke to a sympathetic-looking host. "My daughter's money has torn our family apart," she was saying. "I just want my granddaughter to know her heritage, to understand where she comes from." The host nodded encouragingly. "It must be so difficult being shut out of your granddaughter's life over financial misunderstandings." "It's heartbreaking," my mother continued. "We made mistakes, yes, but what family doesn't? Jordan's choosing money over forgiveness, and it's destroying us all." I was about to turn it off in disgust when Christopher grabbed my hand. "Wait, listen." The interview went to commercial break, but instead of cutting away, the feed continued. My mother, apparently unaware her microphone was still hot, turned to someone off camera. Her tearful persona vanished instantly, replaced by calculating coldness. "Is that emotional enough?" she asked briskly. "Sarah said I need to really sell the grandmother angle if we want public sympathy for the lawsuit." Another voice, barely audible but distinct, responded. It was Sarah. "Perfect mom. Keep pushing the just want to see my granddaughter narrative. Jordan won't dare refuse if public opinion turns against her." Good," my mother said, checking her makeup in a compact mirror. "Because we need to break her before she cuts us off completely. That 20 million has to be accessible somehow." "Dad's USB drive scheme was stupid," Sarah continued, "but this making her look like the villain keeping a child from loving grandparents? This could work." "What about that Christopher?" my mother asked. "He seems protective." "We'll paint him as controlling, isolating Jordan and Emma from family. Classic abuser tactics. The public eats that narrative up." My mother laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "Brilliant, and Emma." "The illegitimate child angle plays well in conservative markets. Poor little girl born out of wedlock, now denied her grandparents' love by a bitter mother. We'll have donations pouring in." "Speaking of which," My mother's voice dropped lower. The GoFundMe is already at 30,000. Amazing what a few tears on morning television can accomplish. The commercial break ended, and suddenly, my mother was back in character, tears flowing as she spoke about missed birthdays and empty arms. But the damage was done. The hot mic had captured everything, and someone at the station had clearly decided to air it. The hosts scrambled to address what viewers had just witnessed. We appear to have had some technical difficulties during our commercial break, the male host stammered. The content you just heard was unintended for broadcast. His co-host, quicker to adapt, leaned into the revelation. I think our viewers just got an unexpected glimpse behind the curtain. Mrs. Peterson, would you care to address what we all just heard? My mother's face cycled through expressions like a slot machine before landing on indignation. That's clearly been edited, taken out of context. Ma'am, that was a live feed. There was no editing, the co-host pressed. Were you or were you not discussing manipulating public opinion with your daughter, Sarah? This is harassment, my mother sputtered. The interview devolved into chaos. As my mother tried to leave, Sarah appeared on camera to escort her out, and the hosts apologized to viewers for the unprecedented situation. Within minutes, the clip was viral. My phone immediately started ringing. David was first. This is a gift, Jordan. Any sympathy they might have garnered is gone. The court of public opinion just witnessed calculated manipulation in real time. Christopher looked as stunned as I felt. They created a GoFundMe. They're literally profiting off attacking you. Emma wandered in, drawn by the commotion. Why is Grandma on TV? Just some adult stuff, baby. Nothing important. I redirected her to her playroom, grateful she hadn't heard the worst of it. Rosa Martinez called next, furious. I just saw the clip. They're raising money while you donate millions. I'm organizing something. This ends now. The GoFundMe my mother had mentioned was quickly found and reported en masse for fraud. Screenshots showed they'd raised $37,000 with a sob story about being cut off by their millionaire daughter, complete with staged photos of my parents looking destitute. But the real bombshell came that afternoon. A producer from the morning show reached out privately through David. They had additional footage they hadn't aired, even more damning than the hot mic moment. Your mother and sister were in our green room for an hour before the interview, the producer explained over a secure video call. They didn't realize those rooms are fully wired for behind-the-scenes content. We have everything. Everything. Your sister coaching your mother on which words trigger sympathy. Your mother practicing different crying techniques, both of them laughing about playing the sympathy card and discussing how to split the GoFundMe proceeds. And Jordan, they mentioned something about your father's USB drive having already been copied and distributed to interested parties. My blood ran cold. They said that explicitly. Your sister's exact words were, even if the police got Dad's original, the copies are already out there. Jordan will have to pay to keep Emma safe. We've already turned all footage over to the FBI, but I thought you should know immediately. Christopher's face darkened. They're planning to use safety threats to extort you. Apparently so, I said numbly. The depth of their willingness to endanger Emma for money kept hitting new lows. The producer continued. There's one more thing. Your brother Marcus was caught on our security cameras in the parking lot, photographing license plates and taking pictures of cars. We think he was trying to identify which vehicle was yours. We didn't drive there, I said, confused. We've never been to your studio. Then he was fishing, hoping you'd show up to counter-protest or something. Security has all the footage if you need it for restraining orders. After the call ended, Christopher and I sat in stunned silence. The hot mic moment was bad enough, but the deliberate planning to endanger Emma to use her safety as a bargaining chip was beyond redemption. We need to increase security, Christopher said finally. If they've distributed your financial information to criminals, we have to assume you're both targets. I'll call the security company. I agreed, though the thought of Emma needing bodyguards made me sick. That evening, the media explosion continued. The morning show, clearly in damage control mode, released selected portions of the green room footage. The public watched my mother and Sarah rehearse their manipulation laugh about their lies and plan their financial assault on me. The GoFundMe was suspended, but not before screenshots revealed they'd already withdrawn $20,000. Comments flooded in from people who donated demanding refunds, expressing outrage at being conned by cruel grifters and shameless manipulators. Sarah tried to do damage control with a hastily arranged press conference, but it backfired spectacularly when reporters asked pointed questions about the hot mic revelations. Her legal training couldn't save her from the court of public opinion, which had rendered its verdict guilty of greed manipulation and child endangerment. Marcus, perhaps the least media-savvy of them all, posted a rambling video response that only made things worse. He admitted to investigating my assets for the family's protection and accidentally revealed he'd been in contact with interested buyers for my financial information. Interested buyers, Christopher repeated, watching the video with disgust. He's literally admitting to shopping your data to criminals. My phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Jordan. The voice was young, female, scared. This is Grace, your half-sister. I saw everything on the news and I need to warn you. Our father contacted me last week. He offered me $50,000 to get close to you to get information about your accounts. The revelation of my father's affair child was shocking enough, but his attempt to weaponize her against me showed new depths of desperation. He said you were evil, that you destroyed the family, Grace continued. But after seeing that hot mic footage, reading about your donations online, I think he lied about everything. I'm so sorry. I told him no, but I thought you should know he's trying to recruit people against you. Thank you for telling me. I managed. That took courage. He mentioned others too. Distant cousins, family friends, anyone he thought might get close to you. He's creating a network, Jordan. Please be careful. After promising to stay in touch, I hung up, feeling the weight of my father's campaign against us. It wasn't just my immediate family anymore. He was recruiting an army all focused on accessing my money through any means necessary. But as I shared the conversation with Christopher, Emma ran in with a drawing. Look, I made our superhero family. We all have shields to protect each other. Looking at her innocent artwork showing our small family surrounded by protective barriers, I realized she understood more than we thought. She knew we were under threat, but instead of fear, she responded with fierce love and imagination. That's beautiful, baby, I said, hugging her close. We do protect each other. Forever and always, she added seriously, because that's what real families do. As the night settled in and the media storm continued outside our walls, I thought about the recordings that had exposed my family's true nature. They'd revealed themselves completely calculating manipulators willing to endanger a child for money. But in doing so, they'd also freed us from any remaining obligation or guilt. The hot mic had been their undoing, but more importantly, it had validated every decision I'd made to protect Emma from them. They couldn't claim love while planning harm, couldn't demand access while threatening safety, couldn't play victims while counting their con money. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new security measures, and probably new schemes from my desperate family. But tonight, Emma was safe drawing superhero shields around the people who truly loved her. The recordings had stripped away their masks, and what remained was too ugly to ever allow near my daughter again. The truth, captured accidentally but aired deliberately, had set us free in ways my family never intended. Their greed had been their downfall, and a hot microphone had become the unlikely hero in our story. Friday arrived with the kind of crisp December morning that made Miami feel almost like winter. The federal courthouse stood imposing against the clear sky as Christopher, David, and I made our way through the security checkpoint. Emma was safely with Judge Coleman, who'd insisted on watching her during what promised to be a difficult day. Remember, David coached as we walked, today is just about the restraining orders. Don't let them bait you into discussing the financial aspects. That's for the other cases. The courtroom was already packed when we entered. Media had been barred, but plenty of interested parties filled the gallery. I spotted Rosa Martinez and several other families I'd helped over the years. Their presence felt like a warm shield against the cold stares from my family's side of the room. My parents sat with Sarah at the defendant's table looking haggard but defiant. The hot mic incident had clearly taken its toll. Gone were the designer clothes and confident postures, but it was the sight of Marcus that made me pause. He sat apart from the others, shoulders hunched, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Judge Rebecca Thornton presided, her reputation for no-nonsense proceedings preceding her. She reviewed the case file with sharp eyes before addressing the courtroom. We're here to determine whether permanent restraining orders should be issued to protect Jordan Peterson and her minor daughter Emma from the defendants. This is not a financial dispute hearing, and I will not tolerate attempts to make it one. Her gaze swept meaningfully over Sarah. Counselors, present your arguments. Our lawyer, Jennifer Walsh, stood first. She was everything David had promised, brilliant, thorough, and experienced in family protection cases. Your Honor, will demonstrate a clear pattern of harassment, threats, and endangerment that necessitates permanent protection for my clients. She began with a Thanksgiving expulsion, the group chat evidence, Marcus's attempted break-in, the birthday ambush, and culminated with the hot mic revelations and evidence of financial information being distributed to criminals. The defendants have shown escalating aggression toward a 6-year-old child, Jennifer emphasized, from calling her derogatory names to actively plotting to use her safety as leverage for financial extortion. This is not normal family conflict. This is systematic targeting of a minor. Sarah rose to respond, acting as her own counsel despite the bar investigation. Your Honor, these are simply misunderstandings blown out of proportion by someone who wants to keep her family from rightfully— Counselor, Judge Thornton interrupted sharply, I warned you about financial arguments. Stick to the restraining order facts. Flustered, Sarah tried to recover. The alleged threats have been exaggerated. We simply want normal grandparent access. Normal grandparents don't call children bastards in written communications, Jennifer countered, displaying the group chat screenshots. Normal grandparents don't crash birthday parties drunk and attempt to grab children. Normal grandparents don't discuss using a child's safety as leverage on hot mics. The first witness called was Officer Rivera, who'd responded to the break-in attempt. She testified about finding Marcus with professional burglars attempting to access my apartment. Did Mr. Peterson provide any legitimate reason for attempting to break into his sister's home? Jennifer asked. He claimed he was checking on her welfare, Officer Rivera replied. However, the presence of known burglars with lock-picking tools suggested otherwise. He also became agitated when we prevented entry, saying something about finding what she's hiding. Sarah tried to cross-examine, but only managed to make things worse. Isn't it possible my brother was genuinely concerned? Ma'am, concerned family members knock on doors. They don't hire criminals to break locks. The next witness shocked everyone, Marcus himself. He approached the stand slowly, like a man walking to his execution. Sarah's face went white as she realized what was happening. Mr. Peterson, Judge Thornton addressed him, are you represented by counsel? No, Your Honor, I'm here to tell the truth. His voice was barely above a whisper. Sarah shot to her feet. Your Honor, I need to confer with my client. I'm not your client, Marcus said firmly. Not anymore. Jennifer approached carefully. Mr. Peterson, why are you testifying today? Marcus finally looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine remorse. Because I'm tired of lying. Tired of schemes, tired of hurting people who never hurt me. He took a shaky breath. My sister Jordan saved us all and we repaid her with cruelty. I want to make it right. Can you tell the court about your family's actions toward Miss Peterson and her daughter? What followed was devastating testimony. Marcus detailed years of planning, revealing conversations I'd never known about. He explained how our father had discovered my success through a banking contact and had been strategizing ever since to access the money. Dad called it Operation Payback. Marcus said, his voice stronger now. He felt Jordan owed us for the shame of having Emma. He said if she could hide 20 million, we could find ways to take it. Take it how? Jennifer prompted. Various schemes. Sarah researched elder abuse laws to find angles. Dad compiled financial data to sell. Mom played the victim for public sympathy. And I? He paused, swallowing hard. I was supposed to be the muscle. Break and find evidence, intimidate if necessary. Gasps rippled through the gallery. My mother's face had gone ashen, while Sarah frantically scribbled notes. What about Emma? Jennifer asked gently. What was discussed about the child? Marcus's voice cracked. Dad said she was leverage, that Jordan would pay anything to keep her safe. Sarah researched custody challenges, thinking if they got temporary custody, they could ransom her back. He looked directly at me. I'm so sorry, Jordan. She's just a little kid. I couldn't be part of that anymore. What changed your mind? Well, sitting in jail after the break-in, I had time to think, really think, about who I'd become, about how Jordan had been sending money all along while we called her garbage, about plotting against a 6-year-old. Tears ran down his face. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want Emma to be safe from us, from what we became. Sarah's cross-examination was vicious. You're lying to get a better plea deal, aren't you? I already pled guilty to all charges, Marcus replied. I'm going to prison regardless. This is just about telling the truth. You're delusional, Marcus. None of this happened. I have recordings, Marcus interrupted, pulling out a phone. I started recording family meetings after the birthday disaster. I knew things were going too far. The courtroom erupted. Sarah objected frantically, while Jennifer immediately moved to admit the recordings as evidence. Judge Thornton restored order and allowed the recordings to be played. My family's voices filled the courtroom, discussing their plans in chilling detail. My father strategizing about selling information to criminals. Sarah researching custody law loopholes. My mother suggesting they claim Emma was being abused to trigger investigations. The calculations, the cruelty, the complete disregard for a child's well-being, all captured in their own words. One recording stood out. My father's voice slurred with alcohol. That little bastard is worth 20 million to us. Jordan thinks she's so smart, hiding money playing charity angel. We'll show her what family really means. Take the kid for a few days, and Jordan will sign anything. Kidnapping, Judge Thornton said quietly. You're discussing kidnapping a child. It's not kidnapping if grandparents take her for a visit, Sarah protested weakly. It is when you plan to ransom her back, the judge replied coldly. The recordings continued. Sarah explaining how to manipulate family court, my mother practicing emotional performances, all of them laughing about spending the GoFundMe money while planning their next moves. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, and delivered by one of their own. When the recordings ended, the courtroom sat in stunned silence. Marcus stood to leave the witness stand but paused. Your Honor, I know I'll never see my niece again, and that's what I deserve. But please protect her from the others. They won't stop. The money has made them crazy. My mother suddenly stood. This is all lies and manipulation. Jordan poisoned Marcus against us. She's the one with millions while we suffer. Mrs. Peterson, Judge Thornton's voice could have frozen fire. I've heard enough. In 30 years on the bench, I've rarely seen such calculated cruelty toward a child. Your own recorded words convict you. But she has so much money, my mother wailed. It's not fair. What's not fair, the judge interrupted, is adults plotting to harm a child for financial gain. What's not fair is calling a little girl terrible names while living off her mother's generosity. What's not fair is everything I've heard in this courtroom today. Sarah tried one last desperate argument. Your Honor, we're talking about family, surely some form of supervised visitation. Ms. Summers, would you allow convicted child abusers around your children? We're not child abusers. You plotted to use a 6-year-old as a financial hostage. You distributed her mother's financial information to criminals, endangering them both. You crashed her birthday party with drunken threats. If that's not abuse, what would you call it? Sarah had no answer. Judge Thornton's ruling was swift and comprehensive. I'm granting permanent restraining orders for Jordan Peterson and Emma Peterson against all defendants. No contact, direct or indirect. No approaching within 500 feet of their home workplace or Emma's school. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. But my father started. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm referring this matter to family court regarding potential criminal charges for conspiracy to commit custodial interference and child endangerment. The FBI already has your financial crimes. Now the state will address your crimes against a minor. You can't do this, Sarah shouted. I just did. And Ms. Summers, your bar investigation will be very interested in today's testimony. Using legal knowledge to plan child exploitation is grounds for permanent disbarment. As the guards moved to escort my family out, my mother turned to me one last time. I'm your mother. How can you do this? I finally spoke, my voice steady despite the emotional storm inside. You stopped being my mother the day you chose greed over your granddaughter's safety. This is just the law catching up to that reality. Marcus paused near our table on his way out, now in custody, to return to jail. Take care of Emma, he said quietly. She deserves better than what we became. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Despite everything, seeing my brother choose truth even too late affected me deeply. The courtroom slowly emptied, but Christopher and I remained seated processing what had just occurred. My family had been legally banished from our lives, their own words and plots used against them. Marcus's testimony had been the final nail in a coffin they'd built themselves. You okay? Christopher asked gently. I think so. It's strange. I should feel victorious, but mostly I just feel empty. And grateful that Emma wasn't here to witness this. David approached with papers to sign. The restraining orders are just the beginning. With Marcus's recordings, the criminal cases against them will be solid. They're looking at significant jail time. Outside the courthouse, the December sun felt warm on my face. Rosa Martinez waited with other supporters, creating a protective corridor as we left. The media was present, but kept at a distance, the story already written in court records, rather than speculation. Is it over? Christopher asked as we drove away. The legal parts, maybe. The emotional parts. I shrugged. Those might take a lifetime. But as we picked up Emma from Judge Coleman's house, watching her run into our arms with pure joy, I knew the most important part was complete. She was safe, legally protected from those who would harm her for money. The restraining orders were just paper, but they represented something larger, the law, finally recognizing that DNA doesn't grant the right to damage children. Did you win? Emma asked as we buckled her into her car seat. Yes, baby, we won. Well, good, she said simply. Can we get ice cream to celebrate? As we drove toward her favorite ice cream shop, I marveled at her resilience. My family had plotted against her before she could even walk, schemed around her very existence, tried to turn her into a bargaining chip. But she remained untouched by their poison, protected by those who truly loved her. The courtroom showdown was over. My brother had found redemption in truth-telling, while the rest of my family found justice in their own words. The restraining orders would keep them physically away, but more importantly, the truth was now part of the legal record. No more secrets, no more schemes, no more using Emma as a pawn in their financial games. We were finally legally, blessedly free. Sunday morning arrived with an unexpected phone call that would shatter the last illusions I had about my father. The caller ID showed a Detroit area code, and the voice on the other end was young, nervous, and achingly familiar. "Is this Jordan Peterson?" the woman asked. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Grace Chen. I think I'm your half-sister." I sank onto the couch, motioning for Christopher to take Emma outside. This wasn't a conversation for 6-year-old ears. "I know, this is shocking." Grace continued, her words tumbling out rapidly. "But I've been watching the news about your family, and I can't stay silent anymore. Our father, Robert Peterson, is my biological father, too." "How long have you known?" I managed to ask. "My whole life. My mother told me when I was young, showed me pictures, but he made her promise to keep quiet, sent money occasionally to ensure our silence." Her voice broke. "Mom died last year, and since then, he's been sending threats instead of checks." "Threats?" "Letters saying I'd ruin his real family if I ever came forward. Warnings about staying away from his legitimate children." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out his legitimate children were plotting to kidnap his granddaughter, so maybe I got the better end of the deal." I sat in stunned silence, processing this revelation. Another secret, another betrayal, another life damaged by my father's deceptions. "Grace, how old are you?" 25. "I was born when you were 7, during what your mother probably thought was a business trip to Detroit." She paused. "I've actually followed your career from afar. When you sold your software company, I was so proud. Weird, right? Being proud of a sister who doesn't know you exist." "Why are you calling now?" "Because he contacted me last week." Her voice hardened. "After seeing him on the news arrested and desperate, I thought maybe he'd finally want to acknowledge me. Instead, he offered me $50,000 to get close to you, to spy on you, to find ways to access your accounts. He tried to weaponize you against me. He said you were evil, that you destroyed the family. Promised I could be his new daughter if I helped him." The pain in her voice was palpable. 25 years of being hidden, and the first time he offers to claim me, it's only as a weapon against you. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to go to hell." Her voice strengthened. "Then I started researching. Found articles about your donations, testimonials from people you've helped. Read the court transcripts from the restraining order hearing. Jordan, he lied about everything. You're not the villain in this story." "Neither are you," I said gently. "You're just another victim of his manipulations." Grace started crying. "I teach 2nd grade here in Detroit. Spent my whole life wondering why I wasn't good enough to acknowledge. Turns out being invisible to him was actually protection." We talked for an hour, filling in gaps in each other's lives. Grace had grown up modestly but happily with her mother, a nurse who'd raised her alone. My father had sent small amounts of money sporadically, just enough to buy silence, but never enough to truly help. She'd put herself through college, became a teacher, and built a quiet life far from the Peterson family drama. "I have photos," Grace offered tentatively, "of him visiting when I was young. Mom documented everything, said someday it might matter." "Can you send them? My lawyer might need them for the criminal cases." "Guys, criminal cases?" I explained the full situation, the gambling debts, the mob connections, the schemes against Emma, the financial fraud. With each revelation, Grace's breathing grew shakier. "My God, Jordan, he really became a monster. Or maybe he always was one and money just revealed it." Grace sent the photos within minutes. There was my father, younger but unmistakable, holding a baby, playing with a toddler, posing with Grace's mother at what looked like a small birthday party. The timestamps showed he'd been living a double life throughout my childhood, maintaining a secret family while preaching about honor and respectability. "There's something else," Grace said hesitantly. "Mom kept journals. She documented every visit, every promise he made, every threat when she asked for more help. Would those be useful?" "Incredibly useful. Grace, I need to ask you something difficult. Would you be willing to testify about his recent contact, about him trying to recruit you against me?" Yes, she answered without hesitation. He's hurt enough people. It ends now. That afternoon, I shared everything with Christopher and David. The revelation of Grace's existence added another layer to my father's lifetime of deception. This changes the narrative completely, David observed. He's not just a gambling addict who lost control. He's been living multiple lives for decades, using money and threats to manage his secrets. We should meet her, Christopher suggested. If she's Emma's aunt and she seems decent, maybe something good can come from this mess. I agreed, and we arranged to fly Grace to Miami the next day. Emma, resilient as always, was excited about the prospect of a new aunt, especially one who taught kids her age. The meeting at a neutral location, a quiet beachside cafe, was surreal. Grace looked nothing like our family, taking after her mother's Asian heritage, but her mannerisms were eerily familiar. The way she tilted her head when thinking, how she gestured when speaking, small echoes of our shared DNA. "You look just like your photos," she said shyly. "I've seen them online from the charity events and things." Emma, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Are you my aunt for real or just pretend?" Grace knelt to Emma's level. "I'm your real aunt. Your mom and I have the same dad, which makes us sisters." "But where were you before?" "Far away teaching other kids like you, but I'm here now if that's okay." Emma studied her seriously, then nodded. "Okay, do you like dolphins?" And just like that, my daughter accepted what had taken me hours to process. Grace was family hidden and hurt, but not corrupted by the Peterson poison. Over lunch, Grace shared more stories. How she'd excel in school hoping my father would notice. How she'd sent him her college graduation announcement and received only silence. How she'd grieved alone when her mother died because reaching out to him risked his rage. "I used to be so jealous of you and your siblings," she admitted. "You got the family name, the big house, the visible life. But now seeing what that family really was. Maybe Mom and I were the lucky ones." "You were," I confirmed. "You grew up free from their toxicity. Poor in money maybe, but rich in everything that matters." "Is that why you hid your success and to test if they'd love you without the money?" "Something like that. Turns out they couldn't even love me with it." David had been quietly taking notes throughout lunch. "Grace, I hate to shift to business, but your testimony could be crucial. You're living proof of your father's long-term pattern of deception and manipulation." "Whatever helps protect Jordan and Emma," Grace said firmly. "He's taken enough from all of us." That evening, after Grace had returned to her hotel, I sat with Emma as she drew pictures of her expanded family. She'd added a new figure to her usual drawings, Aunt Grace standing with us on the beach. "Mommy, why did Grandpa hide Aunt Grace?" I struggled for age-appropriate words. Sometimes people make choices they think will make life easier, but those choices hurt others. Like when he was mean to us. "Yes, exactly like that." "Well, I'm glad we found her. She's nice and doesn't yell or try to take things." From the mouths of babes, Emma had identified the key difference. Grace wanted nothing from us except connection. No schemes, no demands, no calculations. Just a sister she'd never known and a niece she wanted to love. The next morning brought another call from Grace. "I've been thinking, would it be okay if I moved to Florida? Not to Miami necessarily, but closer. I've always wanted to teach somewhere warm, and now I have family here. Real family." "We'd love that," I said, meaning it. "Emma's already planning beach trips with her new aunt." As we discussed possibilities, I marveled at how my father's final betrayal had actually brought something beautiful. In trying to weaponize Grace against me, he'd instead connected two sisters who'd been kept apart by his lies. His manipulation had backfired spectacularly, creating a bond he'd never intended. The federal investigators were very interested in Grace's evidence. Her mother's journals revealed financial crimes spanning decades, unreported income tax evasion on the money he'd sent, and evidence of the threats used to maintain silence. My father hadn't just betrayed one family, he'd corrupted everything he touched. With this evidence, the lead investigator told us we're looking at additional charges going back 20 years. The statute of limitations has run on some, but not all. Your father's gonna die in prison. It should have felt like victory, but mostly it felt like waste. All those years of deception, all that energy spent on lies, all the pain inflicted on multiple families, and for what he'd die alone and imprisoned his legacy, nothing but destruction and the strange miracle of grace. That weekend, we held a small gathering at the beach house. Grace, Judge Coleman, Rosa Martinez, and Isabella Christopher's parents, who'd flown in to meet their granddaughter's new aunt, and our lawyer friends. The family my father had tried to destroy was being replaced by something stronger, chosen bonds, and revealed sisters, protected children, and healing hearts. To new beginnings, Christopher toasted as the sun set over the water. To family, Emma chimed in, raising her juice box, the real kind that loves you. As we clinked glasses, I thought about the journey that had brought us here, from Thanksgiving expulsion to courtroom protection, from hidden charity to public vindication, from only child to discovered sister. My father's final revelation hadn't broken us, it had completed us. Grace caught my eye across the gathering, and we shared a smile of understanding. We were survivors of the same man's different betrayals, brought together by his failure to keep us apart. In trying to use her against me, he'd given me the one thing money couldn't buy: a sister who understood exactly what it meant to be Robert Peterson's daughter, and who'd chosen love over his legacy of lies. The family secret he'd guarded for 25 years had finally been revealed, and instead of destruction, it had brought redemption. Grace was free from the shadows. I was free from the guilt of being the only daughter who disappointed him. And Emma was free to grow up with an aunt who'd teach her that family could expand through truth rather than contract through deception. My father's final revelation was perhaps his only gift, the sister I'd never known I needed, found in the ashes of the family I'd never needed at all. 1 year later, Thanksgiving arrived with the kind of perfect Florida weather that made gratitude easy. Our beach house buzzed with preparation, but this time the energy was joyful rather than fraught. Grace stood in the kitchen, teaching Emma to fold dumplings, a recipe from her late mother that was becoming our new tradition. Like this, Em, Grace demonstrated patiently. Pinch and fold, creating little pleats. Emma's tongue poked out in concentration as she mimicked her aunt's movements. They'd grown incredibly close over the past year, with Grace moving to a school district just 20 minutes away. She spent most weekends with us, building the family bonds our father had tried to prevent. Christopher worked at the grill with his parents, who'd embraced our unconventional family with warm hearts. His mother, Patricia, had taken one look at Grace and declared, "Another daughter to love." Their easy acceptance had helped heal wounds we didn't even know we carried. "Jordan, where do you want the dessert table?" Judge Coleman called from the dining room where she and her wife were helping set up. "Wherever you think best, Pat. You know I trust your judgment." Rosa Martinez arrived with Isabella and her extended family, their arms full of traditional dishes. Over the past year, our families had grown close, united by more than just my anonymous donation. Isabella and Emma had become best friends, and Rosa had become the kind of chosen sister who showed up without being asked. "Any word from them?" Rosa asked quietly, referring to my biological family. "Nothing direct. The restraining orders have held." I paused, considering how much to share, though I did receive a letter through David last week. "From who?" "My mother. She wanted me to know that she and Dad have divorced. She's living with her sister in Vermont, now working at a library. The letter was different." "Different? How?" "Accountable. She acknowledged everything, the cruelty, the schemes, the way they treated Emma. No excuses, no requests, just acknowledgement and apology." Rosa studied my face. "Do you believe her?" "I don't know. Maybe prison and poverty taught her something comfort, and my money never could. But it doesn't matter. That door is closed. And the others? Dad's serving 8 to 12 years federal time. The Kozlovs were all arrested in the FBI sweep, so at least that threat is gone. Sarah was disbarred, and last I heard was working at a call center in Phoenix. Marcus gets out in 6 months with time served. Will he contact you? He's forbidden by the restraining order, but he writes to Grace sometimes. She says he seems genuinely changed, but then we thought that in court too. Emma ran over, proudly displaying a successfully folded dumpling. Look, Mommy Aunt Grace says I'm a natural. That's beautiful, sweetheart. You're becoming quite the chef. As she scampered back to the kitchen, I marveled at her joy. The shadow of last Thanksgiving had been replaced by light. She moved freely among people who genuinely loved her, no longer questioning why some family members were cruel while others were kind. You've built something beautiful here, Rosa observed, gesturing at the gathering crowd, from the ashes of what they tried to destroy. Before I could respond, Christopher called everyone to gather. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples as our chosen family assembled on the deck. The table groaned under the weight of dishes from multiple cultures, a testament to the diversity of love we'd cultivated. Before we eat, Christopher began, I think we should share what we're grateful for this year. Emma, would you like to start? She stood on her chair to be seen, confidence radiating from her small frame. I'm grateful for my Aunt Grace finding us, and for Isabella being my best friend, and for dolphins still visiting our beach, and for Mommy and Daddy keeping us safe, and for dumplings. Laughter rippled through the group. Grace went next, tears already forming. I'm grateful for the courage to make a phone call that changed my life, for a sister who welcomed me instead of rejecting me, for a niece who teaches me joy every day, for finding family in my 30s when I'd given up hope. One by one, people shared gratitudes. Judge Coleman spoke of seeing justice served through love rather than just law. Rosa thanked me again for saving Isabella, but more for the friendship that followed. Christopher's parents expressed joy at their granddaughter's extended family. Even David, who joined us with his husband, shared professional gratitude for a case that restored his faith in truth prevailing. When my turn came, I found myself unexpectedly emotional. I'm grateful for the worst Thanksgiving of my life because it led to the best year that followed, for learning that family isn't about blood but about choice, for Emma having so many people who truly love her, for discovering that when toxic people leave, they create space for healthy ones to enter. Christopher went last, his surgeon's hand steady as he raised his glass. I'm grateful for Jordan's strength in protecting our daughter when I wasn't ready to step up, for second chances to be the father and partner I should have been, for this magnificent, messy, chosen family we've built, and he turned to me with a smile, for Jordan agreeing to marry me next spring. The revelation sparked celebration. We decided weeks ago but wanted to announce it when everyone was together. Emma bounced in her chair shouting, "Wedding, wedding," while Grace hugged me tight, whispering, "Mom would have been so happy to see you loved properly." As we settled in to eat, conversation flowed like wine. Multiple languages mixed at the table as Rose's family shared stories in Spanish. Grace taught Emma phrases in Mandarin, and laughter needed no translation. The feast lasted hours with no one eager to end the gathering. This is what family should be, Patricia observed, watching Emma play with Isabella and the other children. Chosen, cherished, and multiplying through love rather than division through greed. As evening deepened, we moved to the beach for a bonfire. Emma and the children roasted marshmallows while adults shared quieter conversations. Grace sat beside me, both of us, watching the flames dance. "Do you ever regret cutting them off completely?" she asked softly. "I regret that they made it necessary," I replied. "But no, I don't regret protecting Emma from their poison, or protecting myself finally." "I've been thinking about forgiveness lately," Grace continued. "Not for him, he's beyond that, but for us. Forgiving ourselves for not being what he wanted when what he wanted was wrong." "That's wise, teacher." I smiled at her. Maybe that's the real redemption, not redeeming them, but redeeming ourselves from their judgments. Marcus's name appeared in my phone, a text forwarded through David since direct contact was forbidden. It was a photo of a Thanksgiving meal in the prison cafeteria with a simple message. Grateful to be getting the help I needed. Hope Emma has the family she deserves now. I showed it to Grace, who sighed. He's trying. Whether it's genuine or not, who knows, but at least he's away from their influence. Maybe that's the best we can hope for, that they find their own redemption far from us. As the fire died down and families began departing with hugs and promises of Christmas gatherings, I reflected on the year's transformation. The family that had exiled me was scattered to the winds, imprisoned, disbarred, divorced, and broken. But in their wake, something magnificent had grown. Emma fell asleep in Christopher's arms as we cleaned up, worn out from joy rather than trauma. Grace helped pack leftovers for everyone to take home, a natural part of our rhythm now. Judge Coleman and Rosa made plans for a joint birthday celebration for the girls. Life had developed its own momentum, carrying us forward into a future we were building together. "Same time next year?" Grace asked as she prepared to leave. "And every year after, I promised. This is our tradition now." Standing on the deck after everyone had gone, Christopher and I watched the waves roll in under the moonlight. A year ago, I'd stood in my childhood home's doorway being called a disgrace. Now I stood in my chosen home being called beloved. "No regrets?" Christopher asked, knowing my tendency to overthink. "None. They made their choices and we made ours. Look what grew from choosing love over money, truth over manipulation, protection over exploitation." Emma stirred in her bed inside, murmuring happily in her sleep, probably dreaming of dumplings and dolphins, aunts and friends, a world where family meant safety and celebration rather than schemes and sorrow. The redemption I'd found wasn't in reconciling with those who'd hurt us. It was in building something better from the space they'd left behind. Our Thanksgiving table had been full of people who contributed rather than consumed, who loved rather than leveraged, who chose to be present rather than paid to appear. My phone buzzed with one final message of the night from a number I didn't recognize. Opening it, I found it was from my mother, somehow sent, despite the restraining order. Just 2 words, "Beautiful family." She must have seen photos online from someone at the gathering. I stared at the message, then deleted it without responding. She was right, it was a beautiful family, one she'd excluded herself from through cruelty and greed. Acknowledgement didn't equal access, and redemption didn't require reconciliation. As Christopher and I headed to bed, I felt profound gratitude for the journey that had led us here. Yes, it had been painful. Yes, I'd lost the family I was born into, but in return, I'd gained a family worth choosing, a daughter protected from toxicity, a sister discovered through betrayal, and a future built on genuine love rather than performed obligation. This Thanksgiving redemption wasn't about redeeming those who'd wronged us. It was about redeeming the holiday itself, transforming it from a memory of rejection into a celebration of selection. We'd chosen each other, and that choice renewed itself not through blood or law, but through showing up with love again and again. The waves continued their eternal rhythm outside our windows, and I fell asleep grateful for the worst thing that had ever happened to me, because being called a disgrace by the wrong people had led me home to the right ones, and that was the greatest redemption of all. 2 years had passed since that fateful Thanksgiving expulsion, and I stood on my beach house deck watching a scene that would have been unimaginable back then. Emma and Grace worked together on a massive sandcastle, their laughter carrying on the salt breeze. Christopher manned the grill while exchanging surgical stories with his father. His mother helped Rosa Martinez set up tables for what had become our monthly family gathering, a tradition that had grown organically from shared joy rather than obligation. "Mommy, look," Emma called out. "Aunt Grace and I made a castle with a moat, just like in my princess books." It's beautiful, baby. I called back, my heart full at her casual use of aunt. The title had been hard-won through genuine love rather than blood assumption. Judge Coleman, now simply Pat to us, arrived with her wife and a casserole dish. "Jordan, I have news," she said, pulling me aside with a knowing smile. "Remember how you asked me to keep an eye on the legal proceedings?" My stomach tensed slightly. Even 2 years later, mentions of my biological family could still trigger anxiety. "What's happened?" "Your mother's divorce was finalized yesterday. She gave an interview to a small Vermont paper about starting over at 65. She mentioned you." "Oh," I kept my voice carefully neutral. She said, quote, "I lost my daughter and granddaughter because I chose greed over love. I pray they're happy and safe, surrounded by people who deserve them. I'm working on becoming someone who might have deserved them too, though I know that chance is gone." I absorbed this information while watching Emma play. My mother had moved from denial to accountability, but it didn't change our reality. Good for her. I hope she finds peace. Pat studied me. "No desire to reach out." "No. Some bridges once burned are meant to stay ash. Emma has grandmothers, now real ones. Your wife taught her to knit. Christopher's mother takes her to museums. Rosa's mom teaches her Spanish cooking. Why would I expose her to someone who called her a mistake?" "Fair enough. I just wanted you to know." Pat squeezed my shoulder. "By the way, Marcus was released last week." This news hit differently. Despite everything Marcus's courtroom testimony had helped protect Emma, is he following the restraining order? Perfectly. He's in a halfway house in Oregon, enrolled in addiction counseling, working at a warehouse. His parole officer says he's a model participant. And Sarah, still in Phoenix, still bitter based on her social media, still blaming everyone but herself. And my father? Serving year 3 of his sentence. Made headlines last month when he testified in the Kozlov trial. Apparently, prison has either humbled him or broken him, maybe both. I filed this information away, grateful for Pat's gentle monitoring. Knowing where they were helped me feel safer, even if they no longer felt like threats. Time and consequences had defanged them, leaving only the echoes of old pain. "Enough about ghosts," Pat declared. "Let's talk about your news. How's the new company launch going?" I smiled, grateful for the redirect. "Better than expected. Turns out my medical software wasn't a one-hit wonder. The new diagnostic system is already in trials at 3 major hospitals." "And you're staying anonymous again?" "Partially. I'm known in the industry now, but I keep my public profile minimal. Emma deserves a normal childhood, not one shadowed by her mother's wealth or her family's crimes." Christopher joined us, slipping an arm around my waist. "She's being modest. The new system could revolutionize early cancer detection. My colleagues at the hospital are beyond impressed." "It's just code." I deflected, uncomfortable with praise even from chosen family. "It's code that saves lives," he corrected gently. "Own your brilliance, love." Emma ran up sand, covering every inch of her. "Can we show everyone the surprise now?" I exchanged glances with Christopher. We'd planned something special for today's gathering. "Go get cleaned up first, Sandy girl, then yes." As she raced off with Grace in pursuit, I thought about the surprise waiting inside. A simple document that represented so much: adoption papers for Grace. She'd become Emma's aunt in every way that mattered, but we wanted to make it legal. If anything happened to Christopher and me, Emma would go to Grace, not into a system that might somehow return her to biological relatives who'd proven themselves dangerous. The afternoon flowed with the easy rhythm of real family. No one kept score of who brought what. No one mentioned money or obligations. Stories were shared without agenda, laughter came without calculation, and love was given freely rather than transactionally. "Attention, everyone," Christopher called out as the sun began its descent. "Jordan and I have an announcement." The gathered family, our true family, circled around us. Emma stood between Christopher and me, practically vibrating with excitement, while Grace looked on with curiosity. Grace, I began, my voice thick with emotion. You've been my sister in every way that matters since you called 2 years ago. You've been Emma's most devoted aunt, my most trusted confidant, and a gift our father never intended to give. Her eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. Christopher continued, We'd like to make it official. We're hoping you'll let us legally adopt you as Emma's guardian, ensuring that no matter what happens, our daughter stays with real family. And Emma burst out, unable to contain herself. We made you papers that say you're officially my aunt forever and ever. Grace stood, frozen tears streaming down her face. You want to legally make me family? You already are family, I said firmly. This just makes sure the law recognizes what our hearts have known since you chose truth over our father's bribes. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, of course, yes. The celebration that followed was pure and bright. Pat offered to handle the legal procedures pro bono. Rosa's mother declared Grace needed a proper welcome to the family party. Christopher's parents immediately started calling her their bonus daughter. And Emma just hugged her aunt and said, Now no one can say you're not real family. As darkness fell and our gathering moved inside, I found myself in the kitchen with Grace washing dishes side by side like we'd done it all our lives. Do you ever think about how different this all could have been? She asked quietly. Sometimes. If Dad hadn't been a gambler, if Mom had chosen love over money, if they'd accepted Emma from the start. But then, Grace pointed out, would we have found each other? Would you have Christopher as a true partner instead of a distant co-parent? Would Emma have this incredible chosen family? She was right. The path that led here had been painful, but it had also been necessary. Every rejection had made room for genuine acceptance. Every loss had created space for authentic love. My phone buzzed with a text from David. DNA test results confirm Grace is your full sister, not half. Your father lied about that too. Thought you'd want to know. I showed Grace, who laughed through fresh tears. He couldn't even tell the truth about that God. What a piece of work. Doesn't matter now, I said, hugging her tight. Full sister, half sister. No blood at all. Your family because we choose you and you choose us. That's stronger than any DNA. Later, as the house quieted and the last guest departed, I stood in Emma's room watching her sleep. Her walls were covered with photos from our gatherings, birthday parties, beach days, holiday celebrations. Not a single biological grandparent, aunt, or uncle appeared in them, yet she was surrounded by family. Christopher appeared behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. Penny, for your thoughts. Just thinking about definitions, they called me the family disgrace, but what they meant was I wouldn't play their games. I wouldn't sacrifice Emma's well-being for their approval. I wouldn't let money matter more than morals. And now I know that disgrace is just another word for freedom. Freedom to build this, I gestured at Emma's photo-covered walls. Freedom to choose love over blood ethics, over easy truth, over treasure. A soft knock interrupted us. Grace stood in the doorway, adoption papers clutched in her hands. I filled them out. When do we file? Monday, Christopher assured her. Pat will fast-track everything. Grace entered the room, and the three of us stood watching Emma sleep, our daughter, our reason for fighting, our inspiration for building better. You know what I realized today, Grace said softly. Our father spent his whole life accumulating, whether it was money, secrets, or control, but all it brought him was prison and loneliness. You spent your life giving, whether it was anonymous donations, second chances, or chosen family, and look what it brought you. I looked around the room at Christopher's steady presence, Grace's newfound belonging, Emma's peaceful sleep, the photos of genuine smiles and authentic joy. She was right. Every dollar given had returned as love. Every bridge burned had illuminated a better path. Every family member lost had been replaced by someone who understood that family meant showing up, not showing off. "I love you both," I said simply. "Thank you for choosing us." "Oh, thank you for being worth choosing," Christopher replied, kissing my temple. "Always and forever," Grace added, completing what had become our family motto. As we left Emma to her dreams, I thought about the journey from that cold Thanksgiving night to this warm winter evening. The family that had expelled me was scattered, imprisoned, divorced, disbarred, or simply disappeared into their own consequences. But the family that had formed in their absence was thriving, growing, laughing, protecting, and loving without condition or calculation. My phone showed one final message from David. "Vermont newspaper wants to interview you for a follow-up story. Interested?" I typed back, "No, our story isn't about them anymore. It's about us." And it was. The disgrace had become grace. The exile had become embrace. The loss had become gain beyond measuring. In trying to punish me for choosing love over their rules, they'd freed me to find family that chose love over everything. Standing on the deck one last time before bed, I listened to the ocean's eternal rhythm. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments of chosen family choosing each other again. But tonight, I was simply grateful for the truth I'd learned through pain. Sometimes the family that throws you away is just clearing space for the family that lifts you up. Emma had drawn it right in that picture so long ago. Our superhero family shields up, protecting each other from anyone who would do harm. We were smaller than the family I'd been born into, but stronger than anything built on blood alone. We were chosen, cherished, and unbreakable. And that was worth more than $20 million. It was worth everything. "Ready for bed?" Christopher asked, appearing with 2 cups of tea. "Ready for tomorrow," I corrected, accepting the warmth. "Ready for all the tomorrows we get to build together." As we headed inside, the ocean breeze carried away the last whispers of old pain. What remained was simple and true: a woman once called disgrace, now called beloved. A child once called mistake, now called treasure. A family once broken by greed, now built on grace. The true family had won not through fighting, but through building. Not through taking, but through giving. Not through blood, but through choice. And that victory was sweeter than any revenge, richer than any fortune, and stronger than any bond biology could forge. Our story began with rejection, but ended with selection. And what we'd selected, what we'd built from the ashes of what they'd burned, was beautiful beyond words and wealthy beyond measure. Welcome to our chosen family. Entry is free, but the commitment is real love without condition and support, without scorekeeping and presence without price tags. It's the only fortune worth having and the only legacy worth leaving. And it all started with a simple word in a doorway on Thanksgiving night. Fine. Fine indeed. Better than fine, blessed, beloved, and finally, truly, completely home. The end. What a note to you, dear reader. If you've made it this far through every twist and revelation of Jordan's journey, I have a question for you. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own truth? Sometimes the hardest battles aren't with the world outside, but with those who share our blood, but not our values. Jordan's story reminds us that family isn't just about DNA, it's about who shows up with love when life gets hard. It's about the people who see your worth beyond your bank account and stand by you when standing alone would be easier. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to comment below. Share your own experience with chosen family, or tell us about someone who stood by you when others walked away. Your story might be exactly what another reader needs to hear today. And if Jordan's journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about resilience, redemption, and the power of choosing love over fear. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that sometimes being called a disgrace by the wrong people is just confirmation that you're on the right path. Thank you for spending time with Jordan, Emma, and their beautiful chosen family. May you always find the courage to build your own table when you're not welcome at theirs, and may your chosen family be everything your biological family couldn't be. Until next time, remember, you are worthy of love that doesn't come with price tags, support that doesn't keep score, and family that chooses you as fiercely as you choose them. With gratitude and warmth from our family to yours.